Welcome to Tales of a Disappearing City. This episode I've got, what shall I call you? Kevin
Foakes.
Kevin Foakes.
Strictly Kev.
Yeah.
DJ Food.
Okay. All right, cool. A man of many aliases.
There's more.
Yeah. All right. So I think I sort of started getting to know you the last year or so, just bumping into you at various, you're a man like me who likes, what's the word? Hanging around junk or going to boot fairs and...
Yes.
Just digging through the what's the word? Detritus, of society. And
in fact, this is the first time we've met outside of a boot fair.
Okay. Does it feel weird?
It controlledly weirdly.
Okay. All right. That's good. All right. So I always sort of start with a little bit of, I don't know, early years background. So where did the young Mr. Foakes grow up and?
Well, I come from Reigate in Surrey, and I was born in 1970. So, Surrey, south of London.
Yeah.
You know, don't think I came to up to London until about I was 15, maybe, because London was big and scary, and you had Croydon before, so you'd go to Croydon and you go to places like Beano's for records, or I'd go to Crawley.
Yeah.
It was quite a good little record shop called Beat Street in Crawley. That was near the old market, and that would sell American imports. But getting ahead of myself a little bit here, because obviously we haven't kind of got into music and early musical influences.
Yes, yeah. What was? Do you remember the first record you bought?
First record I bought on vinyl was Xerox Machine by Adam and the Ants.
Oh, that is a cool one.
That is a cool one, but I didn't buy it when it came out.
Okay.
Because I didn't have a record player. My dad was a tape man, a cassette man. So we didn't have a record player in the house, and we had this circular argument for several years. Like, I want a record player, Dad. Yeah, but you've got no records. Yeah, but I've got no records because I haven't got a record player. So in the end, I just started buying records when I was about sort of 13, 14. And I was hugely into Adam and the Ants in 1981 when it was his big year. But I found my way back to the post-punk Dirk Wears White Socks stuff. And the first record I bought was Xerox Machine and Car Trouble by Adam and the Ants, pre-Dandy Highwayman. So I was building up this sort of, let's say, new wave. You know, I was buying Japan 7 inches and loved Duran Duran.
Were you in the smash hits?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
You know, because smash hits doesn't get enough love, and I remember buying the first ever issue of Smash Hits, 1978, but for about 4 years, I was buying smash hits.
Yeah. Well, early smash hits was different, wasn't it, as well? It was a little cooler than it became later.
It was a lot cooler, yeah. I mean, I've got ones... my copy of Love Will Tear Us Apart, 7-inch, I cut out the lyrics from smash hits. And that's in my copy. Yeah. You know. And they'd have Susie be on the cover.
Yeah, totally.
You know, I've got a feeling they even had Psychic TV or some of them people in there.
Really? Okay.
I mean, maybe that was Flexi Pop. Maybe I'm getting that mixed up.
Flexi Pop, yeah. I remember Flexi Pop. And I remember that I saw early copies of The Face, actually, because I went to this quite progressive primary school, and they had a recycling shed. It was called a paper shed.
Yeah.
And basically all of the local newsagents would drop off all of their unsold newspapers and magazines, and within that we'd get these paper drops, and then there would be this magazine called The Face that was bundled up in them, and we basically you were meant to go in there, and what happened was the paper was pulped, and it was pulped into sort of burnable bricks, which they then sold to the parents, you know, for like firewood, but it was like reused paper. It was actually really, really progressive. This is in the early 80s.
That is, like, and that does, to be honest, that sounds well ahead of its time, because that recycling culture was definitely not a part of the early 80s.
Definitely not. It was an odd thing, and you know, we'd get bundles of Marvel comics from the newsagents, and we'd get The Face, and occasionally I'd look for it, and I was like, oh, there's a Human League on the cover.
Yeah.
And they're really good. I really like them. They're in the charts, you know, and I'd leaf through it and I wouldn't really know what it was, but it made me aware of that magazine, you know, and occasionally we'd nick stuff from the paper shed, you know, oh, there's a bunch of comics over there, we'll leave them behind the bush, you know, and things like that. And me and my mate used to cut out the film posters from the back of the newspapers, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
well, there's probably quite a lot of rare papers and magazines went into that. You're like, again, back in the day.
I think this is a formative moment in my upbringing whereby I love looking through all this ephemera, as we've already mentioned, you know. Also, I was dirt poor. And so, we didn't have the money to buy that sort of thing anyway. But I was into comics like 2000 AD and Star Wars Weekly and all that sort of stuff. You know, my parents and my nan would buy me that once a week. That was my little treat for the week, you know, and 10p pocket money sort of thing. But, you know, I remember getting into music when I was 10. My dad had tapes. He would tape stuff off the top 40. And I remember listening.
So cassette tapes he had.
Cassette tapes, yeah, like TDKs and all that. BS.
Did he have like a posh cassette player like Nakamichi or something like that? Or?
Not really, but he had one of those sort of quite nice chrome-fronted things with the big.
Was he like some hi-fi nerd or like?
Not really, no. But he liked to think he was, and he would do this thing where he would make tapes, compilation tapes off of the top 40 on a Sunday, and he would wait for a song that he knew that he liked, he'd heard on the radio, and he would do this thing where he would tape it, and you'd have the left and right volumes, and you could fade it in.
Okay.
Basically, and he would fade, and you'd have the VU meters, and then he would try and fade it out before the DJ came in, and there would be these, you know, quite nicely produced compilations at the end of the month and he told me how to do it, and it was very early, and he was like, you've got to do them both at the same time, fade it up till about 6, and then you leave it, you know, you look at the VU meters, and if they're going into the red, it's too much.
Yeah.
And then eventually he gave me my own tape, and I could make my own compilation, and I would tape Adam and the Ants, Human League. I've even got, in fact, I'll have to dig this out, a tape I made in 1982 where I made the tape inlay cover, and it's got all the tracks that I taped, you know, and it says Foakes Recording Company or something. Yeah, I'd made up some.
Oh yeah, let's get a picture of that if you got a picture.
I've definitely got a photo of that somewhere, because a friend of mine sent it to me years and years later. I think I'd probably made it for him, and he'd kept it. So I remember around 10, all of a sudden this light bulb went on. And I remember Messages in the Bottle by the Police, Stray Cats, Runaway Boys. Those were two of the earliest things that I went, oh, I like that. You know, this is interesting. Even though the Stray Cats thing was a retro thing, I remember my dad really liked that.
They had a vibe, the Stray Cats.
They did. They
were
did.
They were sort of punky rockabilly, part of that sort of scene, weren't they? Like,
but I totally miss punk. Yeah. I mean, I was aware of it vaguely, but I was 7 in 1977, so it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And so Adam and the Ants were the first group who I really, really glommed onto, and I think that was a combination of the music and the theatre of it all. You know, there was the dressing up and that sort of, you know, it was an exciting new pop thing. And, you know, Top of the Pops, everyone watched Top of the Pops on a Thursday.
I've got all the old Adam and the Ants singers as well. I was a massive Adam and the Ants fan. I was a bit older than you then, but loved Adam and the Ants. They were like I think quite a lot of people, they were sort of gateway sort of pop, because they were this weird, because obviously you said like the older stuff, he was like a OG punk. In fact, he was in that band, wasn't he? That the Sex Pistols' first gig, Bazooka Joe. In 1975.
Yes.
50 years this November. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I know. But like I said, he did his sort of early sort of S&M sort of punky sort of stuff, and then basically I think he went for it. He wanted to be a pop star.
Yeah. I totally did it, you know, and there was that book. Do you remember in Kings of the Wild Frontier, there was that red book that was in every copy, and it gave you a history of the you know, the Ants, and in that I saw all of the old black and white stuff, all of his graphic design, which I was really into. I learned about Mark McLaren, Sex, Vivienne Westwood, Jordan, all of that stuff, and that was my grasp of punk.
Well, I know he was obsessed with Jordan. He used to write all these love letters to Jordan. When she was working in King's Road.
Yeah.
And then she ended up managing Adam the Ants, and I think she was even in the band.
She was in the band for a song, wasn't she?
She used to come on and, was it poetry or something like that?
I think they used to sing Lou or something like that. Was that it?
Yeah.
But I mean, back in the day, I read everything. I got every picture, every poster, every magazine with Adam Ant on it, and I think he was on the most covers in 1981 in the UK of any celebrity. He was in the paper every day. he was on the cover of TV Times and things like that, all over smash hits.
Wasn't there that story that you paid Malcolm McLaren $1,000?
Yes.
And like to sort his, sort his. Do we think that's true? Probably was. Makes sense.
I'm very good friends now with Dave Barbarossa, who was the drummer back then, and he corroborates that, and he says it is true, but it's not the full story. And I don't want to sort of put words in Dave's mouth, but he's given me his version of that, which was an interesting one about Malcolm enticing the rest of the band away from Adam and saying, do you want to be the leader of this band, rather than Adam, because Adam was obviously the kingpin and the linchpin.
Well, wasn't it that thing with Bow Wow Wow? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. That's what became Bow Wow Wow.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I've heard of that sort of stuff. And obviously he had the last laugh, Adam.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And I love Bow Wow Wow.
Yeah, me too. Dave's drumming is the bedrock of that, and Lee Gorman bass and all that sort of stuff. But and that was always fascinating to me, and I was a real fan. It was the first band I was a fan of, Adam and the Ants, because they had such a strong image. They had a very strong graphic image as well, which I later realised was down to Adam, because he was a graphic designer and he went to art school, went to Hornsey, and he was influenced by Alan Jones and people like that. And there was all this weird, like you said, the sort of fetish sort of weird undercurrent to some of the early Ants stuff, which he largely did away with on the...
Well, I think that was definitely from the Seditionaries, King's Road sort of...
Yeah.
Obviously, all the Westwood McLaren were into that fetish stuff in 75, 76, 77, and it was this striking sort of look.
Yeah.
And he sort of tied into that, and like I said, he had the connection with Jordan, and she was if you like, queen dominatrix of that sort of scene in the... And
I've since kind of understood a little bit more about that, because there was... Johnny Trunk did that collection of Atom Age magazines and stuff like that, and, something that... whilst I'm not into that scene, it's always held a sort of fascination in some ways, because it's so alien and other to anything that I grew up with.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, talking about boot fairs, I've been finding a lot of them sort of magazines lately. I think there's someone we both know who sells them at a certain place.
Yes, we know that.
And they always have a weird... I mean, I've got this amazing Punk Dominatrix magazine from 1980 or 81.
Right.
That's the title of it. It's incredible.
Well, there's such a crossover, isn't there, between those scenes? Really.
And there's all these interviews with, I know McLaren and Westwood and Jordan, in 74, 75, they're in all this sort of... Again, maybe not porn magazines, not the word, but they were sort of sex magazines. A lot of their original shop was sort of selling to that market before the punk sort of stuff.
McLaren tried to do a dodgy magazine later on in the 80s, didn't he, called Chicken, which... Oh, God, let's not go there, but...
No.
I think Paul Gorman's book details that, amongst other things.
But, funny enough, behind me, I've got the File magazine, which is art counterculture magazine from the early 70s up to the end of the 80s. And that's actually got a picture of that magazine. Right. And I've never seen a picture, because it's virtually disappeared everywhere else. I think he tried to erase that one out of history.
He did.
But it wasn't one of his better ideas. But we'll move on from that.
He had a lot of good ideas.
He had a lot of good ideas.
Later.
Yeah.
But so Adam and the Ants was the first sort of love, and then a bit later on, we've talked about this as well. I mean, I was into Frankie Goes to Hollywood and ZTT, the label, very early on. As soon as Relax, just before it was number one, actually, first week or so of '84, I heard it on the radio and just completely blew my mind. And I just dove into that. That was, Adam's career had waned by that point, and I hadn't really found anything else that was really doing it for me. But the whole early sampling, Trevor Horn production thing, the graphic design of ZTT and Paul Morley's sleeve notes and all this sort of stuff fascinated me. And I realised much later I was very much drawn as a kid to things that were graphically strong. Like Adam always had a very strong logo. He had the backwards D on his name, and he would design his costumes and his sleeves, and it would almost be a set. He would have the same logo type each time, and ZTT had a similar feel to it, and it was almost like a fully formed thing. I didn't know about Factory, and I didn't know about labels, little indie labels like, Postcard and things like
Well,
that.
fair enough, man. You're like 11 or 12. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was still very much kind of, watching Dollar Pops and reading smash hits and listening to the charts. And this thing came along, and it was subversive, and it was different. It was there was something about the music that didn't sort of talk down to you in the way that maybe smash hits ended up doing.
Yeah, well, again, there was that thing of like, I mean, I love my early 80s pop, and I was big more into the electro sort of pop and synth pop, I guess is what you call it. But a lot of that stuff, like you said, it was very arty. It was, I don't know if it was like all the art school kids, or it was like the post-punk kids who were like, let's make pop, but let's make it fucking weird. And, there was again, like smash hits was kind of, it wasn't just, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, but it was a bit more like The Face or something like that. It had a bit more about
early
it.
Early on,
yeah.
I think by the time '84 rolled around and you got the weekly #1 magazine, which was definitely a challenger to smash hits, it had kind of gone over into that, pure pop. We're nearing the middle of the '80s, which for me is a sort of tipping point over into a different kind of style. But we'll get to that. What I liked about Z2T is a lot of the record covers didn't have the band on the cover. They had something else. There was a classical religious painting or a mural of Lenin or something like, or like as with Relax, that was an illustration from a porn mag, on the cover. And all these kind of little sleeve notes and extras which pointed to something bigger but didn't force feed you. They sent you off down a little rabbit hole, and every advert was different, every cover was different, multiple formats, remixes, so it was this thing that was larger than the sum of its parts. So I really, really dived into that for a few years. But also actually going back a little further, Kraftwerk in '82, once the model was that weird free kit in early '82, and they reissued all the Kraftwerk back catalogue. I dived into that as well. Computer World for me was just, and the Man Machine, an incredible records, which weirdly I'd heard Autobahn before in the 70s because my dad had it on one of his tapes. I didn't know what it was. It was this weird, what I called scary Doctor Who music. When did Autobahn come out? 74?
74.
And I think possibly it was a hit 75, or was it actually a hit in 74?
I don't know, 74, 75.
Yeah.
Basically, it
was definitely in the charts in the UK.
Yeah.
Because my dad had it on a tape, and I would wait for the middle late breakdown where it was like they're on the motorway now. That bit was the scary Doctor Who bit for me. But I always remember sort of being scared of it, but kind of liking it. It was like the track I'd wait for on his tape, but didn't know what it was until they reissued everything in the early 80s, and they reissued Autobahn. And I was like, oh, there's that track. But it's, the whole side of an album, which is, great. But of course, I didn't have a record player by that point, so I was buying cassettes. So I buy all Kraftwerk on cassette.
Wow.
And my first cassette was actually the Flash Gordon soundtrack by Queen in 1980. Okay. Because I loved the film and I loved the song, Flash Gordon theme, and that was a big one early on. But that was, again, it was I was a massive Star Wars fan, so I was coming out of that sci-fi love from the late 70s, and everything was space for a few years, wasn't it?
Yeah, space was big at the end of the 70s, and I guess it's all that thing we were looking towards the future.
Yeah.
It was generally, and I guess even with synthesizers, they sounded like the future.
Yeah.
That, and maybe that's hard to imagine now, but we were looking, 2000 was, years, miles away. Yeah.
Well, 2000 AD, the comic,
Yeah.
Again, there was something in the air, wasn't there? Because 2000 AD came out 77, Star Wars came out 77.
Yeah.
And I think Star Wars obviously had the bigger impact, but there were so many other things that came off of that for years and years. Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers, all those B-movie sci-fi things.
Yeah, Blake 7,
yeah. I was never a Doctor Who fan, but Blake 7 was quite scary for a young kid.
Well, it was. Well, I mean, I was a Doctor Who fan in the 70s, and I rewatched some of the old John Pertwee ones, and there's the end of one of them, I think it's with the Daleks, you talk about scary Doctor Who music. There's a bit where he's running through this tunnel and then a fucking Dalek comes out of nowhere. And it has the most incredible, mad modular synth noise or whatever I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And it's so fucking terrifying. And then it kicks in with the Doctor Who music.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's...
It was screaming when it...
You know, it has a real scream to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, whenever I watch them, they're just full of this... you know, that definitely influenced a generation of kids. You know, I mean, the stereotype was all hiding behind the sofa, but it was kind of true. But it was the sounds were just like, yeah, they were, because obviously most of the special effects were particularly shit because it was BBC no budget in the early 70s, and again, some of the monsters didn't look that scary. Even the Daleks are basically like a little thing with some plungers stuck on them.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
but they've got the really cool voice, and like I said, they've got this really incredible soundtrack.
But I remember watching Day of the Triffids, and it was exactly the same. Really, really cheap. You could see it all wobbling. Everything was wobbling, you know. Yeah. There's a million of those things that we all saw as a kid and vaguely remember. And,
Quatermass was another one.
We've got Hauntology now, haven't we? Which has been hoovering up all that stuff for a good while, you know, and representing it to us, and we're going, oh, actually, Children of the Stones wasn't that good, was it?
No, I watched that recently. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty rubbish, but at the same time, yeah.
We watched it recently, and it was, the discontinuity with some of it. It was like, did we miss an episode there?
Yeah.
You know, and no, it just literally jumped straight to another bit of the story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the writing wasn't brilliant in that.
But going back to the ZTT thing, you know, I was captivated for the entirety of '84 with that. And Frankie, and that was my first gig, 1985. Frankie at the Brighton Conference Centre, and weirdly after Frankie, you know, they did the album Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, then they did the single Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, and it felt like an end. It was a full stop. They went off and they disappeared for a year or 18 months. Well,
yeah, they had amazing first 3 singles, whatever it was. Well, obviously it was Relax, Two Tribes.
Power of Love.
Well, the Power of Love, which I absolutely hated.
Yes.
You know, I was just like, almost, I loved the first 2 records, and they brought that out, and that obviously was the soppy.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you like that one?
I hated it at the time, but I've grown to appreciate it now because I literally went to see Holly Johnson last week live.
Yeah.
And he sang it as the encore, and, you know, it's a bearable ballad. I'm not into ballads really. He can still sing it. You know, he didn't miss a note. He's still got it, basically. It's never going to be my favourite record, but it's weirdly taken on a sort of Christmas time aura over the decades, and it's been in loads of films now, and you know, it's almost up there with Angels by Robbie Williams. One of those. Yeah, get it played at your
exactly. Well, like I said, it's a good ballad, but I preferred the weird Sado gay sex
me too.
imagery they were doing, and I just thought there wasn't quite the vibe.
No.
You know, it wasn't like the Relax video where they're squirting loads of liquid over.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly. But you know, the track "Welcome to the Pleasure Dome" on the album is pretty much, you know, the epitome, the absolute pinnacle of everything the band have achieved. I think with Horn and ZTT, you know, that whole sidelong, was it 18 minutes or something? Track is just perfection on vinyl for me. It was almost like they'd done it. I didn't need to hear any more. But the sampling thing had caught my attention, and you know, Art of Noise as well.
Certainly. Yeah.
And it kind of, there was a natural jump straight into hip hop, and I remember exactly when it was. It was the middle of the 85 when Paul Hardcastle was at #1 with 19. Suddenly, I'd been aware of hip hop. You know, I'd heard Buffalo Girls and I'd heard Rocket and The Message, and you know, obviously Rapper's Delight way before that. But I'd never really got hip hop. I actually got graffiti before. I saw a thing about Subway Art in the summer of '84. You know, literally, I was on holiday with my mum and dad, and Frankie Say t-shirts were everywhere in the markets. You know, all the bootleg ones. Frankie Say, fuck yourself or whatever. or yeah, who gives a fuck what Frankie Say was a classic one.
Yeah.
And my mum had a magazine, and it had an article in it about Subway Art, and it had a huge long thing, and it was the Scene PJ piece. Do you remember that with the Howard the Duck characters either end?
Oh, okay, yeah.
From Subway Art, and I just looked at it and I went, oh wow, that is incredible. And I could see it was on the train, and I started to read it, and then later on I looked for the book and I couldn't find it, but it piqued my interest, and there was a guy around Reigate called Rusty Spray, and he'd started.
Was that his real name?
No, that was his. His name was Russell Mears, actually. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago, but he'd done a piece the year before on a local, derelict building, and everyone was like the talk of the town. What's this graffiti stuff? And it was all, it said Zulu, and it had like a tombstone on it. It was all copied outside my art or whatever he'd seen, and it was a real thing locally for us. And all of a sudden, just this light bulb went off in my head. Now I want to do that. I want to learn how to write graffiti. So I started drawing in my sketchbook, and then hip hop made sense, weirdly. A friend of mine had electro, the electro sound, Street Sounds records, and he bought Electro 4 round, and it had Sucker MCs on it by Run DMC. Classic. Which is, pretty much the beginning of the second generation of hip hop, I later realised.
Well, that's the start of the drum machine era.
Yeah.
That's got the DMX, it's got that classic DMX clap, which for all you nerds out there, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like, I love that sound.
But that track was very different to anything else on the record, which was more electro-based. Obviously, it's called Electro, which I still liked, but the Run DMC track was the one on that.
Well, it's stripped down, isn't it?
It's stripped down, and it's got rap on it. Everything else was more sampley voiced. I can't remember what was on 4. Was Def Momentum on?
Don't think it was.
Or was it the?
Is it Radioactivity or?
Wasn't that the one with the?
I know it's the blue one, but
the blue 4, and it's got a version of what is it? What's it? Beethoven's Fifth or whatever.
Oh yeah, okay, which is not all that, to be honest.
Kind of shite, really.
It's kind of shit, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But there was other stuff. I think it was Clear on that one, actually, by Cybertron, maybe.
Yeah.
Or was that an earlier version? Anyway, let's dig out.
I'll put the track list up. I've got it. I don't think 4 was my favourite, to be honest.
No.
I think it had a couple of good tunes, but I think it had a couple of duff ones on as well.
Yes. But anyway, that was my entry into that series, and of course, went back, got the other 3, then 5 came out, and 5 was one of my favourite ones. That had Wild Style on it, had The Breakers, Revenge, Arthur Baker
classic
on it. And by this time I'd seen Beat Street, and that that's all over that record, and Arthur Baker is it, and electro and by extension hip hop made sense to me. We're in 1985, we're at Live Aid, which for me is the pivot. And Simon Rowsell says this in his book, Retromania. He's talking about the end of the interesting pop years, the post-punk, new wave years. And he bookends it with Frankie and ZTT. So like this was the end, and after that it was Live Aid. And he's right, I think. You get Live Aid and you get Stock Aitken and Waterman. And there's a few...
Well, I was going to say, what about the Reynolds girls? But then
I'd rather Jack than Fleetwood Mac.
Exactly.
Yeah. The one exception that I can think of being Zig Zig Sputnik, who were a weird little out of time and out of place detonation in the charts for a little while. And I have a lovely, sort of love for...
Well, I used to see Martin Degville out and about. He was one of them characters. He's been about, I think, since the punk.
Yeah.
And he'd almost been like, again, that was his little gamble to try and, because it was with Tony James. Who again is another interesting character. I would put it like that. I think
they were so out of time and place, but they needed the technology to be right to make those records. So they could only really exist in that era, and that 1986 was their big year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just don't know. What was the highest they got in the chart? They didn't get to number 1, did they?
Well, I always thought they got to number 1, but we looked this up the other day, and I think Love Missile got to number 2 or 3.
Okay.
And I thought it was number 1, but no, sadly not, supposedly.
I mean, I love Suicide, the band Suicide, and they were definitely, they weren't Suicide.
Yeah.
But that tune's all right, but it could have been a lot better.
Well, it was diminishing returns afterwards, wasn't it? Because all the other tunes were exactly the same, but not as good.
Yeah.
But they had the look, they had the outfits, they had the video, they had the graphic design. Again, it was like Adamant. It was like a big package. And Frankie, and this is stuff that's throughout my life I've realised is attractive to me. It's like I need the whole picture, and the graphic part is a very strong part.
That's true. I guess that is the pop aesthetic. I mean, you need to. there's plenty of bands where they had ugly band members and they didn't really cut through, whereas someone like Duran Duran or Adam, or they had the tunes as well.
I mean, I liked Duran Duran. Early Duran Duran, the first album, Planet Earth, and all that. Girls on Film.
Girls on Film is a great
good,
single.
Good videos. I mean, it wasn't my thing. I remember having posters of them on my wall, and I'm sure my parents thought I was gay or something when I was like 13 or something. Like these men with like frilly shirts and makeup, slight makeup, but then nothing that Bowie didn't do or whoever a decade before. After sort of 85, I just dove headlong into hip hop. So I was just listening to Mike Allen on Capital Radio because I was in Surrey. I couldn't get Kiss. I couldn't get the Pirates up here. And I would listen to Mike Allen on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. He would have he'd have the Groove Sales chart on Fridays. So that hipped me to Groove Records.
Did you ever go up to Groove?
I did. Yep. First record shop I visited, I think, in Soho. About 85, and I came up and I bought the import of Breaker's Revenge, Arthur Baker, which had extra mixes on it, Def Jam, Jazzy J, King Cut, Word of Mouth and DJ Cheese.
Classic, yeah.
And possibly another, but I don't remember. So, I think actually there was a Wrecking Crew thing. Maybe it was CIA. Do you remember CIA, My Posse?
Oh,
which
yeah.
was basically a post-Wrecking Crew, pre-NWA single with Ice Cube on it, Dr. Dre on it. I think they only did one 12-inch.
The only Wrecking Crew ones I know are a bit dodgy, to be honest.
The first album was good.
Was it?
Give Me Some Juice.
Okay.
Surgery, Dr. Dre.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Surgery's great, yeah.
The one with Lonzo on it.
I know I've got one of them that's absolutely appalling, but like...
The second album, when they started doing the Cabbage Patch and all that was
maybe that's what I'm thinking of. It's terrible.
So I was coming up, I went to Groove, and that was amazing. I walked past it the other day, actually, said to my partner, that was where Groove Records was, and the outside building is still there,
the shape of it.
Window
the shape of it.
Yeah.
I mean...
What was the granny's name who was there? Granny somebody, Jean, Auntie Jean or something.
Yes, it was Jean. It was.
That was it, yeah.
Yeah.
And the big yellow bag with Groove Records on it.
Well, I've got there's a little short video that I cut in sometimes when we talk about Groove Records. I'll cut it in now. But you can see people shopping in there in like 85, 86.
Right.
And you can zoom in, behind the counter and all that.
So me and my friends would come up and go, we'd go to that. I don't remember going anywhere else in Soho record-wise, but we'd go to the big HMV that was on Oxford Street, and we'd go to Covent Garden and we'd hang out where the graffiti was, where the Chrome Angels were painting and stuff. I didn't ever meet any of them or anything like that, but I got into photographing graffiti around London. And then in the late 85, there was a jam in the Jubilee Hall in Covent Garden, which was put on by some of the Chrome Angels. They had a graffiti exhibition. It was Mode 2, Bando, Scribbler, Zaki D, Pride. They all had an exhibition in the daytime, and I came up with that with my friends. And we were all wearing, your grey night wind cheetahs and your high techs and your baggy.
Do you have some photos from them times, Kev?
There are some somewhere, yes.
Right.
I've seen there's a.
I want to see them.
There's a film of inside. This jam was called Freestyle 85.
Okay.
It was December 1985, and it was the first hip hop jam. I came up with my friends, and we had to. It had a graffiti exhibition in the day. Then it closed for a few hours. And then in the evening, it had a jam, a hip hop jam. And it had Cookie Crew, Cosmic Jam. The DJ was on. Sergeant Rock, I think, was one of the MCs or something. I've got flyers from it, and I've got posters. I'll dig those out for you. It's got all the names. Imperial Mixers were on it. I think Mastermind Herbie was meant to be there, and Davey DMX was meant to be there. They didn't turn up, and we ended up staying all night. And I think it ended at about 3 a.m. And we're Surrey boys, and all the trains had finished, and we had to basically bum around Covent Garden for 3 hours in the freezing cold. It's December. Wait for the tubes to open, at 6.
Well, that's when Covent Garden was a bit more like it was the remnants of the old fruit and veg market.
Fruit market, yeah.
And I think that closed by then, but it was kind of deserted, a lot of them streets then. It wasn't. I guess it was just starting to come into the trendier sort of Covent Garden.
Yeah.
But there's whole bits of it was still yeah, like it was.
There was lots of the metal tabling still
Yeah.
up with the coverings over it, but obviously then the traders had packed up for the day and gone home. So
I mean, I used to go down Floral Street then, in the mid-80s. You know, that street round the back, and there's loads of there was like there's a big clothes shop called Jones,
right,
which I remember back in the day they'd have like Catherine Hamnet trousers in there for £300.
Wow.
Which, like, to me at that time, I'd be looking at them and wishing I could afford them, and like £300 was, well, I don't know what it is in nowadays, it's about £1,000 or something. They'd have all these outrageously priced clothes. I'd just be looking, I'd go in there and just be like, oh my God, and then just I couldn't believe how much they were.
Yeah. I mean, London back then for me was a completely alien world. I had no, I didn't know where I was going. You'd get on the tube and go one stop where you could have walked in 5 minutes. You didn't know where you were going, and you had this little tube map in your back pocket, and you were trying to find places.
Well, do you know what? I mean, I was always going up from when I was a little kid because my mum worked around Soho, and there's loads of parts of London I didn't know, but around the West End I knew my way around. But the same with my mates, they'd be literally like, how do you get from Trafalgar Square to Leicester Square? And again, they want to get on the tube, and I'm like, it's just up here.
Yeah, or the bus.
Or exactly. And I'm like, no, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, we have, I eventually worked out how to get around Soho and where the good record shops were, and I found Forbidden Planet when it was on Denmark Street. Went in there, and that was a mecca for me for the comics and stuff, like late 80s when, there were just amazing things happening in the British comic world, especially in 2000 AD, and then you got Watchmen coming out and that whole graphic novel boom of the late 80s. And I was so into hip hop, but I would go and pick up flyers for anything that looked interesting. I'd pick it up, and I picked up a load of stuff. Obviously, late 80s, acid, referencing and stuff. Something with a smiley on it. I didn't know what any of the clubs were, and I didn't really go to many of them because I was coming up to town for either to buy records or comics. I was going out to Westbourne Park and Ladbroke Grove to photograph graffiti on the tube and climbing into old buildings to really dangerous stuff.
that was always a hub, wasn't it, in London? I mean, I spoke to Jerome a bit about this, like the West London sort of scene. And again, I lived in Westbourne Park at the end of the 80s, and obviously the bit where the Westway is and all that bit.
Trellick Tower.
Yeah, I mean, what is it about that bit? Is it just because of it almost has got that kind of New York, like even where the train, it's not quite in when the train's in the Bronx and you see it on them high bits, like
it's the Westway, isn't it?
It's got a bit more
huge concrete pillars.
Yeah,
and the community there was always quite bohemian anyway. And I'd imagine people just went, "We're going to paint here, and no one's going to say shit." Basically.
Well, again, I guess it's got that J.G. Ballard sort of. And funny enough, I got these because I know privately we talked before about old early 70s like IT magazines, all these sort of, and I got one of them. It's about 1970, and it's all going on about the Westway, and people still protesting about the Westway, destroying all that area and the bad things about the Westway.
Yeah, but there was always graffiti in West London anyway. There's a book that got reissued a few years ago, which was about the 70s graffiti, where people were writing Clapton is God all over.
Was that Jill Posner? Oh,
I'm not sure. Piers Marchant, I think.
Maybe
was
it's a
the designer.
One.
But and the first piece of graffiti in the UK by Futura was in Paddington, wasn't it? Down the train lines.
Okay, yeah.
When he came over to paint.
Well, I guess that's the beat. When you come out of Paddington, Royal Oak or whatever.
Royal Oak, where the skaters were.
Yeah, and then you have all the bit, and then
you go to Westbourne Park, Ladbroke Grove. After Ladbroke Grove, you got Latimer Road, and then there wasn't much after Latimer Road. That's where it kind of ended, but you're kind of getting out of that area now. But we used to go down to a little playground in Latimer Road. There was always pieces there. There was the Hall of Fame in Westbourne Park, which we called the Pit. I don't know whether anyone else called it the Pit, but it was a sunken ball court, no longer there. There was Trellick Tower, and I remember taking photos of that when it first got pieced. So I've got pieces of it where there's still bare wall there, and then there's all around the Westway. That was pieced all over the supports to the motorway and the shops and buildings. I used to climb into buildings like disused buildings and walk down the train tracks and do all sorts of stuff that I would never do now.
Well, yeah, you're getting a bit old for that.
I mean, bit old for that. But also, I was incredibly naive. I was, a sorry kid.
But again, that's that thing of London. I mean, I guess there is still parts of London like that.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But at that time, again, it was still them remnants of like London just being full of all these areas that were just decrepit, falling to bits. I mean, we're in the old docks now, but obviously that, and I've talked many times about the old warehouses along by the river that are no longer there.
Yeah.
And parts of London were still recovering from the Second World War, and they'd been bombed out, or like, again, they were almost like slums that had stayed, hadn't been redeveloped. And, and parts of Notting Hill was still like that. It hadn't been, what's the word? Who did that film? Richard. It hadn't been Curtisified, if that's a verb, or whatever. It hadn't been like, it still had like a little edgy sort of vibe, but it still does to some extent. There's still bits of it down there, It's not totally disappeared.
Not so much, but it was very dodgy around Ladbroke Grove. I got mugged down there once, completely walked into it with a mate of mine, and, we didn't know what we were doing, and we must have stuck out like a sore thumb, but you live and you learn, don't you?
I think I remember getting sold like a Bovril cube down there, trying to buy some. This is in the 80s, so you'd be up there and you think you like some street hustle, and then you get some like, you go around the corner and you realise it's like fucking Oxo or something.
I would talk to people, I would meet writers and stuff, down there, and just talk to them like it was no thing at all. But I only had one ever bit of trouble, but the amount of things that I did, and wandering around with a camera down around there, I cringe sometimes thinking, God, it could have got so much worse,
Yeah.
But that was the thing for me, just coming up and taking graffiti. I'd go up to the West End, buy records, go out to Notting Hill, Ladbroke Grove, area, and do all that, and come back in and go home. That'll be a good Saturday for me.
Well, that must have seemed like another world going over there then.
It was.
Because then if you're coming up from Reigate, was it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it totally is a different...
Because me and my friends were doing graffiti back in Reigate, but there were only two crews, and there were literally like 4 or 5 of us, and then we ended up joining up.
I was going to say there was no beef. There's no mad beef between the two Reigate crews.
That was the thing. It was so minimal, where everyone knew each other anyway, and you'd have a little battle, and then you just say, "Should we just join forces?" And we all had Subway art. By this time,
it sounds very English.
Yeah, very English.
Yeah.
Very the home county sort of thing. So we had Subway art. So we had what little we could see on the TV or let's say Beach Street or whatever, and then coming up to London was like, oh, this is another world with another form of graffiti. We weren't writing Zulu and break anymore. We were looking at Chrome Angels in Covent Garden, or going out to West London and starting to see what was going on with Non-Stop and London Giants and Hellraisers and all that, All Star Kings and stuff up in Kilburn. They had this huge mural that we went and saw as they were painting it, and that was how to get new art tips until Subway Art came out. Not Subway Art, Spray Can Art, which was the follow-up to Subway Art, which was 86, 87?
Yeah, was that the sequel? Because
it was, yeah.
Because I didn't quite understand the which one came out first.
Subway Art was 84.
Yeah.
And I think Spray Can Art was 87.
Right.
By which time, the trains, I think even by the time Subway Art came out, the train scene in New York had probably died anyway. It was Mayor Koch, wasn't it, who basically whitewashed everything, and but it was too late there. The genie was out of the bottle.
No, it was still going on. I mean, I was in New York at the end of the 80s, and it was still going on.
What, full pieces on trains?
Oh, do you know what? Maybe I could. I'm not saying. I don't want to say I definitely saw that, because maybe I didn't, but. All I remember is it was the New York that I'd imagined, if you like. Right. Yeah. But maybe it wasn't quite like the opening scene of Beach Street.
Yeah. Or Style Wars or something.
Well, I will say that I don't know if I've told the story before, and I won't tell the whole story, but there was a night that me and Buddha went out, who was actually in Spray Can Art, and he was mates with Henry Chalfont, and we did acid, and we ended up early in the morning. We ended up in the amphitheatre on the Lower East Side, where all Wild Style had been filmed, and all the graffiti was still there.
Really?
Wow. And like the hands. The hands were still there, right? But it was all falling to bits, or the roof. And I remember he climbed on the roof, and I was a bit like, it was mad because it was like 6 a.m. We're, you know, and we're in there, and we're in the final scenes of Wildstyle.
Wow.
You know.
Did you get your shotgun out like Ram LZ and your raincoat?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. You know, I was still tripping on acid, like. But there's them bits that were still there. That was still there.
Yeah.
Because it was where that scenes was shot. It was in this free. It's an amphitheatre where they used to do loads of free gigs, so you could just go in there as well.
Like a public.
Yeah, it was a public thing in the park, right by the river.
Like the ball courts as well.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
They got done over like that. I've seen photos of the Wildstyle piece.
But that was
dogged after years of.
But that was mad that all the graffiti was still there. That the hands were still there. Yeah.
Amazing. The end of the 80s for me was graffiti. You know, graffiti and hip hop. That's all I did. I went to hip hop gigs, went to things like Fresh 86 at Wembley Arena.
Oh, you went to Fresh 86, yeah.
Both shows, the matinee and the evening, there was a bit of crossover, but there were different groups as well. That was amazing. Went to Raising Hell tour with Run DMC, Beastie Boys, Houdini, and who was the other one? LL Cool J. And then I was at the London Hammersmith Odeon when they recorded the Public Enemy, you know, Takes a Nation of Millions, you know, with the whole sirens and London, England, consider yourself and all that. So I was in the crowd for that. That was LL Cool J, Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy. Just used to go to everything. Mantronics at the Town and Country Club.
Oh, amazing. I saw Public Enemy at the was it in Camden? It was their first show in the UK.
Right, okay. I thought that was the Hammersmith Odeon. I thought that was...
No, they did one.
Maybe there was a smaller one there.
No, it was just before Bring the Noise come out.
Right. Well, this was the same time because Rebel Without a Pause had been out, but Bring the Noise wasn't out.
All right. Well, maybe I'll look into it.
But maybe they did a smaller gig in Camden, you know, before.
Well, I remember because it was quite a mad atmosphere in there.
Was it just them on the bill?
I think it was just them. I mean, I don't know. They must have had a support. I don't know, but I do remember it was a real mad atmosphere. It was quite, you know, and they got everyone to do like, the Nation of Islam salutes, you know. Yeah. And it was all that sort of vibe. And I remember I started doing it, and then some young black kid next to me going, "Why the fuck are you doing that?" And I was thinking, "Yeah, you're right."
You don't know what you're doing at that.
Exactly, but it was very tense. You know, it was quite a scary.
Their gigs are charged. You got guys on stage with presumably fake guns.
Yeah, I mean, it did. Yeah, it did feel like it had a certain tension in the air there.
I loved Public Enemy when they came along. It was just a breath.
Oh, they were one of the. Yeah, they were like the punk rock of.
And again, really, really strong graphic.
Yeah.
Look from the off logo. You know, the stencil.
Yeah.
Thing that all the releases fit together, had a good image, you know. Again, it's all there. Like groups like Hijack as well, you know, very, very interesting. You know, riffing off of Public Enemy in certain ways as well, but doing their own thing.
Well, I've just got a copy of the book. What is it? The one about the UK hip hop?
Mega Blast.
Yeah, because I think you got a chart in there, or do you speak in there or something like that?
I don't think I might do. They did ask me, but I don't remember doing anything.
I know you definitely got a chart in there.
For a while.
He picks like the top 100 UK hip hop.
Okay.
And the book is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Oh my God.
After the interview.
I'll show you then. All right, yeah. But that's got loads of interviews with all the UK hip hop scenes from the mid 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't dug into enough in it, but again, I was immersed in that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's funny because, like, for years, that UK hip-hop stuff was almost looked down on. And at the time it was, because it was like people trying to pretend they're American. Some of them were. Not all of them were. Obviously, people like Hijack and that weren't.
Yeah.
But it was kind of, it was almost like, it's not American, it's not cool.
Also, some of the early hip-hop in the UK, it was almost a bit corny. Yeah. You know, Phase One, that stuff, you know, and there's a few others that spring to mind, but Hijack were the first people that I remember going, oh, wow, this is up there. And also, actually, weirdly, Coldcut as well. Coldcut Productions, early, you know, Say Kids, which was obviously a homage to The Lessons by Double D and Steinsky, but done incredibly well. And then they jumped into Beats and Pieces, which was, 87?
No, Say Kids was a key record for me. That was just like...
And then, obviously, the Eric B. and Rakim remix, which pretty much rewrote the rule book on what a remix could be. And that was, 87? You know, I mean, that was it's a seminal record, Bomb the Bass, obviously.
Well, I guess there was that era as well. I mean, I used to buy records at the Soul to Soul shop in Camden, and they'd always have like the bootlegs. That's where you could buy stuff like Say Kids. They'd always almost have the under the counter.
Yeah.
These are like slightly dodgy mixes.
The finest ingredients.
Yeah, and there was like Turntable Tricks and all them and they're all these sort of early white label, but it was 86, 87, all that sort of stuff started coming out, and all the pre-house sort of stuff, but like killer sort of.
Yeah.
And
that's for me where it was really popping off in the UK, was more of the DJ mix kind of stuff, and you had Chad Jackson winning the DMCs that year, and then Swift won it later, and he won the world, didn't he? World titles. And and Ultimatum, who were remixing Jungle Brothers a bit later, and it was all really good stuff, really well done.
So were you like DJing at home, or were you cutting stuff up? Were you learning how to scratch and all that sort of stuff?
I started in '85, and I just had one turntable with a belt drive and a one of those great big sort of tape radio things, amp, all in one, with the big chunky, buttons and stuff. And I learned to scratch off of that. And then for my 17th birthday, I asked my dad for 2 turntables. And we went to the car boot, and we got 2 different turntables. One was a Technics something. I think it was a Technics SL120 or something.
Okay.
Still a belt drive, but it had a tiny.
Only got a 0 missing.
Only a 0 missing. Still silver. I had the curved arm.
Okay.
But I figured out later on it didn't have a pitch bend on it, pitch slider.
Yeah.
But it had a little thing in the turntable arm where if you put a screwdriver in and you turned it, it would, just tweak the pitch a little bit. So
really?
I used this as the pitch control. Obviously, only a couple of points left, and then I had another thing was like a Pioneer, and that did have pitch on it. It had a little wheel on it.
Yeah, I remember when they had the wheel. That was not really, obviously that was a bit like, fuck.
It was terrible.
I remember my mate, he had the 2 shittiest decks, belt-driven ones, and we'd be there with that wheel, obviously no chance. And you just touch the deck, and it either stop, or you push it, and it just goes spinning. I mean, fuck it hell. I mean.
So I was first of all, I was actually making pause button mixtapes back in like 83, 84, by putting things together like all the mixes are Relax, and sort of, and I've got one with White Lines on it and Rocket and some of the early Street Soundsy sort of things. So they were just pause button mixes, and I would tape little sections and try and hit it on the one, But then I learned to scratch on this one deck. Then I got 2 decks and a Tandy. We were talking about this the other day, the realistic mixer. I had the up faders one, but without the crossfader. And learned to mix basically in my bedroom. Learned to mix and scratch. Was buying hip hop, doing parties with friends, local stuff, birthday party here, barbecue there, doing that sort of stuff. And then, I'd occasionally, we'd put a proper party on in the local recreation centre or whatever. I had a mate over near Red Hill called Ricky Groombridge, and he was working. He didn't go to college. I went to college. I went to do A-levels, and then I did an art foundation in Reigate. But he went out to work, and he had decks because he'd bought, he had a salary coming in. So I'd go over to his house on a Sunday, and we'd just mess about.
So he had Technics, proper Technics there.
Actually, before that, even I had a really good friend called Russell Witherman. Used to live in Crawley. He moved away to Crawley, but he managed to save up and buy Technics as well. And we even entered a mix onto Mike Allen, because he had a mix competition, I think around 87 or 8. I think it was 88 actually, because it had Spoonie G, the Godfather, in it. And we made a mix in his bedroom, on his decks with a tape thing, and Mark Allen played it.
Oh,
but
amazing.
He said when he came to announce it, he said the wrong person, it wasn't us. So I was like with my mum and dad, I'm on the radio, this is me and Russell's mix. And they came in and obviously didn't understand what they were even hearing. But then at the end, it was a real downer because he backtracked the wrong person. He was like, that was by blah, blah, blah. And we were like, oh. We didn't win anyway, but it was nice. It was a nice early bit of radio play.
But he was like a big DJ on the scene, wasn't he, Mike Allen?
Mike Allen was, he was a lifeline for people outside of London with hip hop. He had three evening shows a week, and then it went down to 2.
And he was older. He was a bit older.
He was a lot older. Yeah, he was like a sort of soul DJ. Wasn't
is that where he come from? Because I don't know how he I don't know if how he ended up being like the hip hop electro guy.
I don't know either.
Because like, did he just sort of start playing it and then he sort of thought, oh, you know, I mean, I know he loved the music, must have loved the music, but like, you know, yeah, but yeah, was he one of the old?
I think he was one of the old guard, wasn't he, from the sort of the 70s and 80s? Because he used to have Greg Edwards on before him on a Friday night.
Okay.
He would do the soul show. But he had a great radio voice, quite a baritone sort of thing. Really good command. A little bit like listening to your dad, trying to be down with the kids. But
that's what I mean about him. He was a little bit older.
He was definitely older, yeah.
So it's always a bit odd that he was like had all the cool sort of promos and all that.
Yeah, and occasionally he'd try mix, and it would always train wreck, and you'd be a bit embarrassed for him. But it was fine. He was Uncle Mike Allen. Yeah, and you know he'd have the tunes every week. He'd start off with a new hot track.
Well, he'd have the Groove chart, wouldn't he?
Groove record sales chart on the Friday and the Alan's Army on Manoeuvres chart on the Saturday, which was the voters. You know, you'd ring in or write in, and he'd make the thing. And they were virtually identical, but it didn't really matter. It was the audience interaction, wasn't it? And then I just used to tape it all the time. I'd tape the whole thing, and then I'd have one of those tape to tape, double cassette things. Basically, make the good tape out of the bits that I liked, and so I've still got all of those, like 70 odd tapes.
Oh my god, you should start putting them up, mate. Like,
I've got them all digitized actually. I haven't gone through them, but did it a while ago. But but
just put them up on YouTube, mate. Like, I don't know, because it takes a while though. I've been meaning to do that with loads. I've got so many old cassettes and but
I just did all my Kiss mixes, just jumping forward slightly, but when I used to be on Solid Steel on Kiss, I started that during lockdown, and it took me 4 years to do 200 tapes.
Okay, well, all right.
But that was remastering one a week virtually, and finding all the track lists as well.
So where are they?
They're all on my Mixcloud, but they're behind a paywall for subscribers, which is £3 a month at the moment. But you can hear anything going back to '93 up there, going through to about 2005-06.
Okay.
A lot, there's a lot in there, but we're jumping forward slightly there.
All right. So all right. So let's go back to where were we before?
So late 80s, I was doing, like I say, I was DJing with my mates locally, going up to London, photographing graffiti, buying records, and I did go to a few clubs. I wasn't really into the acid house thing at the time because basically I couldn't afford to buy even hip hop records back then. I was doing a cleaning job after college and stuff. So, but I remember vividly hearing Humanoid on the top 40 by Stack of Humanoid and just completely getting it. I'd heard all this stuff in the, on the news, acid house. Didn't really get house music, kind of still Steve Stilt Hurley, at number one, that's okay. I bought there was the polite word is ambivalence between the hip hop crews and house. Yes, but a lot of it was real downright hatred, and there's quite a lot of homophobia at the time. There was. Definitely. I mean, I used to go to Delirium, and that's the famous one where they'd get people throwing bottles at them for playing house records. All the hip hop crew. Was that Noel Watson and people? Yeah, it was exactly who mixed all the electro albums. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was a kind of a weird transition. Yeah, it wasn't that it was there for me, but do you remember early house was it was gospel pop music really, set to a different beat and a drum machine and synths. It was very vocal, and it wasn't really my thing. It was like black soul music with a new structure. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was gospel music. I mean, what I remember from the early house stuff is very minimal. And I remember going to, it was a lot of gay clubs that played that music. What I remember is, when you say gospel, that's an interesting term. I think of Daryl Pandy and that sort of operatic. Promised Land is quite, when the angels up above. No. You can imagine that being sung in church. That was. But I guess that's what I'd say about the early house stuff. What I remember from them clubs was it was like being in church, as in. But people would just be almost like praying to this bass drum. It's very minimal, but it was a real. I don't know how to explain it. It was a real spiritual feeling being in them clubs. Yeah. I guess it was a bit like the post sort of disco sort of stuff of people going to worship at these sort of nightclubs all night. Yeah.
That kind of got lost when, like, you know, all the popular, you know, crossed over. But
I was so steeped in hip hop at that time, you know, and I'm, you know, the end of the 80s, I'm 18. You know, I'm this like testosterone fueled teenager going, yeah, Public Enemy, you know, like weird noises. And then I think the weird noisiness of acid is what appealed to me over the sort of smooth slickness and soulfulness of house.
Humanoid is such a banging tune.
It is.
If you're into electro,
and
then like fucking hell, that's not too much of a stretch.
No.
Humanoid, and that's, if you like you said about it's not this, I understand what you're saying about the softer house with the vocals. It's not like that, you know. So I kind of got that, but I couldn't afford to buy that much of it over what, because you know you think the late 80s, golden era of hip hop. So many good records coming out, which still stand up today. You couldn't buy them all. Luckily, some of them were coming out on UK labels, you know. So well, you were saying about Groove, and I'm obviously buying them imports. They were like £5 each.
£5 in the middle of the 80s.
In the middle of the 80s, and I remember like
buying a normal record now.
Exactly. It's true. But yeah, I think the normal records were $1.99 then.
Yeah,
$1.99, maybe $2.49.
Yeah, or even 99p if they'd been around for a few months and they were now discounted.
So I do remember spending £5 for a record.
Yeah, it was a lot,
fucking lot of money. And so that's why quite a lot of times I literally would have if I was lucky, I'd have a tenner in my pocket. I could buy two.
Yes, totally.
You know, and that was, and then again, me and my mate would go, and he'd buy a different two.
And we'd have to get the train up as well and find something to eat. I used to go on to do you remember those pizza slice guys on Oxford Street? They just had a slice of pizza, and it was huge. And you just buy that for 99p, shove that in your face, and that was your food for the day. And then you'd survive on adrenaline. And you know, but so I was, I had my ear to the acid house thing, but I wasn't going to raves or anything like that. I didn't do any form of drugs in the 80s at all. I wasn't that way inclined. But there was actually a huge rave in Woodhatch, which is actually where my parents, where I was living at that point, which is a little town just outside Reigate. And I think it's quite a famous one now, where they turned over one of the police vans and all the people. It was on farmland and stuff. I think it was actually all right. I think the farmer had done a deal with the promoters and has basically going, give us X amount of money.
Well, they often do. Like, again, that was a common sort of thing. Was this 80s then that happened?
This is, I think, 89.
Okay.
Yeah, and friends of mine went to it, but I was so not into that thing. It was on the periphery, and they were doing their E's or whatever, and that was their thing. But yeah, I look back on that and down thinking that was literally on my doorstep. And to be fair, I don't think my dad would have let me go to it. He was quite strict anyway. Although he let me go out and paint graffiti, which was very weird. On top of
okay, well, yeah, there you go. That's quite progressive.
Yeah. I did ask him about that years later. I said, why did you let me and my friends go out and paint graffiti? And he didn't really have an answer. That's very odd. But he did always say to me, if you get caught, that's it. You're on your own. I'm not sticking up for you.
Fair enough. Fair enoff.
Yeah.
Right, you go.
But I had a really strict dad. He was really strict.
But that is quite crazy then that he allowed you to do that. Well, did he see it as artistic then, or like?
I don't know. I
just thought he's into it.
I suppose maybe because it was creative. Well,
that's what I mean. It is creative.
But certainly the stuff I did wasn't at that time. I was still learning how to use a spray can.
Yeah.
But, maybe he picked his battles. And
there's plenty of shit graffiti. I will admit that. I'm not. I like my graffiti. I'm not an expert on graffiti, and it has to be really good for me to be like, oh wow, yeah. You know what you like, and But so in 1990, I came up to London and started studying at Camberwell College of Art, originally as an illustrator, and then halfway through the course switched to graphic design, and ended up, living in London, living in Tooting, and there was halls of residence in Tooting. I think they're still there actually. That must have been like living the dream, coming up from like, It was
like it was there or Brighton.
Right.
And I went to Brighton and thought, I don't actually like the college. I love the place, but I didn't like the college. and recognising that London was really the mecca.
Well, Brighton's a cool city, but
Totally,
like London's got obviously a lot more if you're in there.
Yeah, and I got into Camberwell and I was like, this is good, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so just sort of got into London life, but stopped graffiti completely because I was too much of a small fish in a big pond, and I needed to, you don't just go into a city like London and start piecing, because there's all sorts of territorial things going on and crews and beefs and
yeah.
I don't know enough about it, but I was wise enough then to know that maybe that probably wasn't going to be something I wanted to get into, and also the legality of it as well. Where I came from in Reigate, you kind of knew the places you could get away with painting. We'd always do stuff on derelict buildings and inside warehouses and stuff.
Well, again, if there's only 2 crews, it's not too hard for the play. And again, but
also going up to somewhere like Westbourne Park, and seeing the level of expertise on display and artistry, and going, I can't compete with that. I'm going to look like a toy.
Well, do you know what? I mean, that is part of the thing. I mean, that's part of the cool thing about it in a way. It's like, check out what I've done. This is fucking amazing. Yeah, and you have to be on your game. And if you go up and you do a shit piece, then you're going to look like a fucking mug. And someone will just go over it and just be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You're just going to embarrass yourself.
Exactly. Well, you got to have the guts to do it. All right, so you started at Camberwell.
Yeah, so just got into London life really, and just started going to a few different places. I didn't the first year I didn't really get into London life too much. I was going out with somebody back in Reigate, and so I'd go home at most weekends and see her, and so I didn't really kind of fully get my feet, under the what's the phrase, under the door or something, I don't know.
I don't know.
Get my slippers on or something, I don't know, but we went out to a few different places. Milk Bar, do you remember the Milk Bar?
Yeah, I do remember the Milk Bar, yeah.
Places like that. One of the tutors at Camberwell, Stefanos, was actually a DJ, and actually there was a photographer called Alex, and he was also a DJ, but Stefanos would take us to the Milk Bar, and this was around the time when acid jazz was happening, and Galliano and the Brand New Heavies were big, and I think even in the early days he put them on, and he would sort of introduce us to that scene. And Talking Loud was just was Talking Loud at the Fridge was big. Do you remember that?
I remember when it was at Dingwalls, but maybe that was a bit before.
I think Talking Loud at the Fridge was maybe 92.
Okay, yeah. I'm thinking like end of the 80s.
But we were in South East London, so that was local for us.
Yeah.
The Ritzy and Cinema and the Fridge back then. So we'd go out to a few places.
Apparently there's a whole book coming out about the Fridge.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like, was it Andy Tchaikovsky who ran it?
Yes.
With his missus? Who used to run the Roxy, he was like legendary punk club.
Yes.
But I heard an interview with him recently, and he said he's bringing a book out about the Fridge, and he said he's got the whole archive of all the flyers. Wow. I know this will pique your interest, Mr. Graphic Design, but he said he's got loads of stuff that's never been online.
Right.
And he was like, I haven't put it online because as soon as you put it online,
it's gone. Yeah.
I'm always searching images for this, and it's. Yeah, with all the will in the world, you can't credit everyone for everything. No. And once it goes online, it kind of is in the Wild West, or, for the certain copyright stuff. Anyway, he said he's got absolute amazing archive going back to the early 80s of virtually every flyer, all these graphics. He's doing this book that should come out in the next year or so, all about the Fridge.
Good.
So I think you'll love all that.
Yes, definitely.
Fridge was definitely a place I went to some things for, but it was a good space.
Yeah. Yeah, I always used to pick up flyers for the Fridge. There were all sorts of things happening on there.
Yeah.
And again, good graphic design. Swifty used to design all the Talking Loud stuff, and I used to keep, and still, well, I don't really do it digitally now, but I used to have big scrapbooks, big A3 scrapbooks, and all the stuff that I'd pick up would go in there, and I sometimes pull them out, and they're evocative of an era. You've got flyers with De La Soul on from the late 80s and things like that, and Shoom flyers and all that sort of stuff, and a load of stuff that's been forgotten too, and it would be mixed up with adverts from the time. Like, do you remember when Benson Hedges and Silk Cut used to advertise in all the magazines? Cigarette advertising was allowed, and they used to do these incredibly
Well, silk art, you always used to do them really. I think it was because you could get away with. You couldn't. You know, it wasn't. It was the point where you couldn't really have like a doctor smoking going.
No,
smoking's good for you. That was beyond the pale. No. So silk cut would just have them weird little adverts, and they would be like a little bit of silk with a cutting, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And
totally.
Really very arty, and it
very
like,
arty and abstract. Yeah.
And what was the B&H ones? I can't remember what B&H used to do.
I remember the one I remember was there were the gold boxes, weren't they, with the sort of black thing, and I've got one with a snail trail coming out of a cigarette box, and there's all the they've put like lettering in the snail trail, and it says, you know, Marlboro Lights or something. I don't know, B&H.
B&H probably.
Yeah. But yeah, there's all that sort of stuff, you know, that was around, and it was all feeding in, and all the comic stuff as well, you know.
Yeah.
So and then in the end of the second year, I moved into a house in East Dulwich on Goose Green, and this is East Dulwich before it's gentrified.
Right.
So it's just another suburb that no one goes to, with a curry shop and a 7-Eleven and a, you know, and a little chemist and stuff. And I moved into this house. I split up with the girlfriend that I was going out with, and I was living with her at the time in Crystal Palace. So I had to kind of leave and find a place, and I was completely like, shit, I've missed the boat with all my college friends because they've all paired up and they're in the second year and they're all house sharing. I've been living with my girlfriend, and now I've got to find a place. I moved into this place with a house where I didn't know anyone. There was a guy there called Mario and a girl called Lou, and we got on okay. Mario was cool. I had some decks, and he was like, great, you like music? Great. He'd just come back from Manchester, and he'd been there for Manchester, basically. He'd gone to college there for the Smiths. He was really into Smiths, but by the time he got there, Manchester had kicked off. He'd totally gone there at the right point, and he'd just finished, and he came back and he had all these records, and he had all these Weatherall mixes of Flowered Up and things like that, you know. And so, you know, we got on like a House on Fire. We liked The Orb, we liked The Shaman, we liked William Orbit and all this sort of stuff. You know, there was a crossover. He wasn't so into hip hop, but he was into the dance thing, and so yeah, we just got on, and then we ended up having a party, like a house party, in the house, and it was, you know, it was good fun. I just started my third year at Camberwell, and a friend of mine on the college course, David Villard, needed a room, and there was a room going in the house, so it was like there was three of us, and then we had this party, and it was kind of like a college party, you know, like, and beginning of the year, and we had, I don't know, 150 people in the house. It was great. We had like 2 floors.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. That's quite a lot of people.
Yeah. And we did it all up. We did all the decor because we're all students, you know.
Yeah.
Made all the decor. We're all art.
Oh, you're art students, mate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we did all the house up, and we had a downstairs room, which is like the rave room, and we hired in some lights and a sound system and all that. And we lived above a chemist, and there was nobody either side. So, actually, no, there was a group of students at the other side, but they all went to a different college, but they just came round for the party. They were like, great.
Well, that's lucky. That's the way to be, mate, yeah.
So we did that, and it was a real success, and we just thought, oh, man, we should do this again. But between that and the next party, which happened just before Christmas, I went to a car boot sale. Common thread.
Yeah.
Bought a synth. Can't remember what it was. It was pretty shit, to be honest. But the guy didn't have the instruction manual or the kettle lead, you know, the cable or whatever. And I said, "Can you know, I'm going to need this, you know." And he said, "Don't worry, I know who's got it. My mate Lloyd's got it over in Brixton. Give me a number and we'll go there at the weekend and we'll get it." So I went round this guy's house with this guy from the car boot. It was this old Rasta guy. Have you read this story in the thing?
I did read it, but no, tell the story. That's fine.
So
yeah,
this is actually told in maybe greater detail in a little book that's coming out with a record that I've compiled. Went to this Rasta's house in Brixton to pick up this thing, and you know, he's taking his sweet time and making us wait and doing his thing, and he starts talking about the fish, and he starts talking about the fish is the key to the kingdom of heaven, and everywhere you look there's fishes, and everyone that takes the fish has a connection and a telepathic connection and all this sort of stuff. And I'm just going, what's he on about? And the guy's going, look, he's just go with it. He does this to everybody. And then after a while, you know, he comes out with the thing and gives me the thing, and he's like, oh, do you want to take the fish? And I'm saying, what do you want to? What are you talking about? And he said that everyone who comes to my house takes the fish. The postman's taken the fish, you know, the cleaning lady takes the fish, whatever. You know, anyone who comes to the thing in my home can take the fish, and we'll all have a telepathic fish. We'll all have a telepathic link. And so he brings out this thing. And I'm in this position where I've just split up with this long-term girlfriend. I'm in a new house. I don't know anyone. I'm pretty raw from everything, and I'm just really open to experimentation at that moment in time. My life has reached a fork, you know, and I'm just like, let's do this then.
Fork in a stream.
Yeah, exactly. So he comes out with this bowl, and it's got these tiny fish in it. I didn't think they were goldfish. They were tiny, and he said, stick your tongue out, slap the fish on, and said swallow, and that was it. So I took the fish, didn't chew it, just swallowed this fish,
right.
And then that was it, and just went, right, I got to go now. And
2 weeks later, you woke up in a...
Yeah. Suddenly, I had a telepathic link to everybody in London. No.
Yeah.
Went back to the house, said to the other two, you're never going to believe what I've just done. And they were just like, what the hell are you talking about? So I said, look, come back. And
you're pretty brave to eat the fish. I guess maybe there's a point where you just have to go with it.
I think I was in a situation, a very, very alien situation, and I was a bit open to experimentation at that point. And I just thought, what harm could it take?
Exactly.
I wasn't a vegetarian or anything like that.
I was going to say, lucky you're not vegan or nothing.
No. And to be honest, it was so quick, I wasn't really thinking. But anyway, so that happened. Spoke to Mario and David back at the house. You're never going to guess what happens. We went back about a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, and I brought them back. I said, I've brought some people to take the fish. So basically, he went through the whole same spiel again. I don't think David took it, but I think Mario did. And then, we sort of went on our merry way. It was like, this is a weird thing.
Shame you didn't record him. Like, that would have been a great bit of audio to have.
I kind of know. I think I could probably find where he lived, but I never saw him again. He may not even be alive now. But
I say that's over 30 years ago now.
Yeah, and he was older. He was, he was probably in his 40s. Definitely.
He might still be there. He might still be there. If you're watching this, get in touch, and we'll come round and have some more fish.
I think his name was Lloyd. I think his name. Big Rasta guy, very big dreadlocks. All right. Really lovely guy. Really lovely guy. I mean, he wasn't scary in any shape or form, which is why I think I did it. It was a really...
Is there like a Rastafari thing about fish, or is it just like...
I don't know. I mean, there's a religious thing about fish, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
but anyway, it was what it was. I didn't really think much of it. And then we were thinking about doing another party, and I thought, well, what could we call this party? And it just popped into my head, Telepathic Fish, let's do this. And at the time, we were we were going out raving and stuff, and we were going to a lot of squat parties, like Tribal Energy. Have you ever heard of them?
Yes, I remember the name, yeah.
They were active around Camberwell, New Cross, and places like that. They were kind of like Club Dog.
Right.
Those kind of guys. There was a squat element to it. There was a traveller element to it. There was a big dub element to it, and there was a big rave element to it. So you go in sort of like the techno room and the main room, and then there'll be this chill out room, which would invariably involve dub, and maybe some more chilled out stuff like the Orb, which there was a big dub element to the Orb as well. And so we'd go into these rooms, and we'd end up spending more time in the chill out room, and then we'd go home and we'd chill out in my room with the decks. Afterwards, everyone comes.
There's loads of bloody chilling out.
Lots of chilling out. Well, but this is the thing. We ended up really the music was getting faster. I don't know if you remember around sort of 92. We're talking 92, 93. This is just on the edge of jungle coming in. Hardcore was speeding up.
Well, no, I do remember that well. Yeah.
We were getting above 130.
Yeah.
It was getting harder. The German techno was coming in on the 4/4. We'd gone out of that experimentation. That acid was funky, and house was soulful, and then we got into rave. We had bleep as well, and we got into rave, and then hardcore, as I'd call it, maybe the harder version of rave and Toy Town techno and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, I call it hardcore for that time. Yeah,
you're rising high. You're the Hypnotists, some of the harder end of that, GTO and people like that, and of course you had the pop stuff like KLF and Shaman and the Orb to a certain extent, and Future Sound London, but there was definitely a harder underground coming up, and I think those squat guys, they really liked that. They liked it really hard. There's a lot of speed going around, and We were more, let's go and chill with some weed and some acid in the chill out room. So we really liked that sort of stuff. And then we decided to make the first Telepathic Fish party that was in our house. The second party that we did, it still had the dance floor downstairs, but it had a chill out room upstairs, and we'd met Mixmaster Morris around because he lives in Camberwell, and we asked him to come down and DJ at our house in our kitchen, which he did, which was really, really weird because, you know, he'd just put an album out on Rising High, and to us he was this, you know, he was this celebrity, techno celebrity, the irresistible force, you know. And
where did he come from then? Was he always in Camberwell, or like
he lived in Camberwell in Grove Park, and he moved in 1984.
Okay.
In fact, he said to me the day I moved in, I remember Relax was number one.
Okay.
So it would have been early 84, sorry.
Yeah.
And he lived in a lovely old place that was kind of falling to bits by the end, down in Grove Park. You know, I think Grove Park used to be quite a heavily squatted area, especially at the top.
No, all that area around there was full of squats.
Yeah. So maybe even when he moved in, it was a squat, I don't know, but it certainly never got done up by the landlord over the years. And so he was around, and we'd go to house parties around there, and he'd be there playing, you know. And so we got to know him, and then we go to Club Dog and some of the earlier Mega Dogs, and we just sort of bump into him. And I don't know if you know Morris, but if you bump into him and start talking, you know, you can be there for quite a while.
Well, do you know what? No, I've never really. I've seen him about loads, obviously, over the years. He's someone I've never really had a chat with.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd love to at some point. He's an interesting cat. That's why I was just interested where he come from, because again, he was slightly older.
He was older, yeah.
And then he sort of, you know, obviously I remember the Rise and High sort of stuff. I didn't really know him before that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think he did a couple of things in the 80s before that were maybe slightly more pop based, but he was hanging around with the Shaman and doing that whole synergy stuff with the Shaman as they were morphing into the you know, the ravey pop Shaman that we know from the indie Shaman around the sort of end of the 80s. You know, they did that 12-inch with Bam Bam, didn't they? And then they were definitely taking on the Shaman were really interesting because they came from the indie roots up in Scotland, and then they recognised obviously the shamanic aspect to acid house and the drugs that were being consumed at that time, and, you know, later flowered in what we'll get onto Megatripolis. And those
well, I was going to say that's maybe we're coming on to that, but there's definitely, I mean, there was a bit of, I had a chat with Aaron in the last podcast about this, but almost some of the bands who suddenly got into the ravey sort of stuff, there was that sort of crossover, you know.
Yeah, and I think the Shaman exemplified it really best. And
they could see the psychedelic elements of it.
Yes, definitely.
And there was that kind of link to the 60s sort of stuff with an 80s sort of...
Which was horribly uncool at that point as well, but kind of came back because of acid house, because of those visuals and that kind of, you know, your bubble light show kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, this is another tangent completely, but the light show was revived by the rave era in a lot of ways that had died in the 70s because people required that kind of thing again. But it was mixed with things like lasers and strobes. All of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe it's another detailed conversation, but you're saying about the chill out rooms, because what I remember was, you'd have the UV sort of stuff on the wall.
Yep.
You know, that was kind of, you had the...
black light.
Yeah, the black light stuff.
Yeah.
You had brain machines.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you were lucky.
If you were lucky, which I still don't really... No idea. Well, I know what it's meant to do.
Well, it's a Brian Geisen thing, isn't it? Again, it's that thing in a headset, really.
I don't know. I remember putting these fucking headsets on and, you know, obviously, I'm not sure that was the space, really.
Well, it was all that VR stuff around that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Lawnmower Man and VR was the thing.
That's why I was always like, VR is shit, because I was just... It was always like, again, it was this thing. It was like, you're going to be... check out all this future stuff. Yeah. And it was just like, no, this is...
You're going to be living in a world of silver men. dancing.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a disappointment of what I didn't want the future to be like, but maybe I'm being too cynical and going.
No. I was exactly the same. It looked a bit crap to me. I preferred stuff like. I mean, I was never into fractals particularly, but
no, exactly. Fucking fractals.
Do you remember William Latham? Were you aware of him? He was an American artist that was doing a lot of stuff with computer arts. If you can imagine H.R. Giger put through a computer, but actually morphing and animating, it was actually quite interesting. Some of the first stuff I saw that actually had some sort of visual originality to it, should we say. But yeah, there was a lot of tie-dye going on, a lot of fractals.
Yeah, tie-dye was always like, I was literally like...
Wasn't for me.
Stay away from the fucking tie-dye. Yeah.
I came from a hip-hop background, and it was camouflage was the nearest you got, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a lot of army fatigue going on.
No, exactly.
There was a crossover between, you know, the techno crews. I remember Aphex coming out in army combats and stuff like that early on, and military waistcoats and things, and there was that, you know, there was that techno, almost like an army look, wasn't there?
Oh, well, loads of my mates from the early 90s, they all dressed in like...
Fatigues,
like I said, it was like the East German jackets or then Polish ones, and basically they were all cheap. You could get them down the market, and
exactly.
And we talked about Lawrence Corner, where you could buy all this sort of stuff. All the army surplus was pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it was always like if you wanted a cheap sort of cool look.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Getting loads of combats and like it kind of. You know.
I was very into that look at one point, and it was very much, you know, I associated it with the techno look.
Yeah.
But then I associated the sort of tie-dye stuff with the chill out look, which was very hippie. And this was the conundrum for me, as I was really into the chill out stuff. I wasn't really into the fashion, and I wasn't really into the look so much. I was into the West Coast psychedelia from the 60s, like your Rick Griffins and your Victor Moscoso posters and all that underground comic culture. I loved all that, but I didn't see that much of that permeating the 90s, because everything was early computer graphics, you know, and fractals and stuff. And there was still a little bit of cut and paste collage going on. Do you remember Encyclopedia Psychedelic, the magazine, which started in the 80s as well, and then morphed into the Megatripolis crew thing? But yeah, it was always a conundrum for me, because I didn't have a hippie bone in my body at that point. I was a very sort of like, you know, let's rave, let's have it, but then let's chill out and, you know, do loads of acid. And,
well, I think because like you were saying about all the music getting faster and harder and darker, and
it reached the tipping point.
I was loving all that shit. I mean, I was at AWOL and all these moody hardcore.
Right, okay, yeah, I never went to any of that. For me, it was, you know, Aphex Twin's Didgeridoo, which kind of upped the ante another 10 BPM almost. That was as far as I needed to go, and even that track isn't banging. It's sort of, it slips and slides all over the place. You know, it doesn't have a sort of aggressive edge to it. It has a power and a propulsion. But
it's pulsing sort of tune.
Yeah, and then that brought on, that era sort of begat what, you know, the artificial intelligence warp era, for want of a better word, and that whole Black Dog, Auteca, B12, As One, all those guys, you know, I loved all that stuff. Melodic, well-constructed techno without the sort of tyranny of the 4/4, as we used to call it, you know, so much as well. Although, you know, Aphex definitely, you know, did a bit of that as well. But we just decided to do our parties based around the chill out, and Telepathic Fish became that chill out party where we'd do it in our house, and it got too big. The second party had like 300 people or whatever, and then we'd do another one, and by this time this girl Chantel Passamonte had moved into the house. Lou had moved out, and Chantel was super connected on the scene in London. She was working in Soho and places like that. She had connection with beggars, she knew journalists, she knew promoters. We ended up doing a couple of squats over in Brixton, Tunstall Road and places like that, which was the old Dole office, and she just sort of pulled us out of this sort of like little house party and sort of introduced us into the London Underground. But it was a very hippie London Underground, because she knew a lot of promoters, and a lot of promoters who were women, like Jenny from Megadog, Magda from Oscillate in Birmingham. She knew journalists like Ben Wilmot and people like Rocket Ron, who then started Ambient Soho, and we ended up, three of us, Chantel, myself and David, working in Ambient Soho and doing everything from the graphic design for the shop, you know, like the front piece and all the interior, and you know, just we were just out of art college by that point. And
yeah, I used to go in there a lot back in the early 90s. I mean, that was my connection to that ambient sort of scene. I mean, I guess what I'd say about Ambient Soho was they didn't just sell ambient though, did they? They were like quite all over the shop.
It was electronic dance.
It was more just the more. It was good sort of alternative selection of stuff in there.
Ambient was the word there, but
ambient was the word.
It wasn't purely just ambient stuff. No, definitely not. But I used to work there on a Friday and a Saturday and sort of lend my expertise, shall we say, to the selling experience.
Well,
so I might have even, served you.
You might.
In the day.
You might. I might even have bought some records off you back in the day. Who knows? Probably. I don't know. But yeah, no, it was a great shop, and obviously I had Rachel on, who I believe she works a bit later than when you were there.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I may have met her, but it didn't resonate.
Yeah,
with
Rachel
me.
Miss Pink, I'm talking about for those who don't know.
Very good podcast.
Yeah, she was on a previous podcast. Yeah.
But Rocket was very pivotal because he gave us a little space, and he had a little label Worm Interface, and David was designing stuff for that, and he gave me a job, and I was working in books, etc. in the week, up on Oxford Street after I left college and stuff. And it was a good time, and we were doing stuff, and we started to get press for this stuff, and then we did stuff in Cooltown in Brixton, which was another ex-Dole office, an ex-tanning shop as well, that's no longer there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's over the road from the big Peace mural with the giant skeleton.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, I think they were originally somewhere else, weren't they? And then they moved to,
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Dole place was the one that's opposite the mural, but then, because I was always a bit confused, and through doing this, I found out that they actually did start out in a tanning place, but then they moved.
Oh, did they?
I think the one on Cold Harbour Lane, because this is what, again, I might have got this totally wrong, but I always thought that was the tanning place, but I think that was the Dole office.
Right, okay.
But I think they were originally in the tanning place around the corner.
So that's where they got their name, but then
they were called Tan Arts.
That would make sense, because that was a big space for a tanning shop.
Well, do you know what? I don't think I've told this story before. Maybe you'll know, because I remember going to a gig there. It was the early 90s, and what I do remember is it was loads of ambient, and they were all playing loads of ambient, and we'd all paid £5 to get in, and it was quite full, and everyone's going, "Oh, what the fuck? When's the proper music going to start?" Because it literally was no beats, and and it was in the rave. It was in the rave, and then something like 12 o'clock, these Harry Krishners come out.
Oh, really?
And they all started doing this Harry Krishna thing, and apparently whoever's sound system it was, turned Harry Krishna.
Oh.
So the whole thing was they were trying to convert everyone to being happy. People were just like, fuck off. Like I said, it was all ambient. It was all probably I don't know, very nice ambient Indian music or something. But everyone's just expecting it to be some fucking rave. And then the Harry Krishners come start dancing. We're just like, what the fuck? Then we'd like, just get out of here.
But I think that's maybe a consequence of using what you've got, to do something, and maybe it was the Harry Krishna sound system or something,
Well, I think it was some sound system. I think they turned to Harry Krishna. I don't know.
Right.
It was one of them nights I'd never forget it, because we were looking at each other like, what the
what's
fuck
going on? But there were other people doing stuff, we'd go to Club Dog to sort of rave and stuff, and then Club Dog turned into Mega Dog a bit later, and they went.
Was this up in Finsbury Park? You used to go.
Finsbury Park, the
Roby,
the George Roby, and then. Then they were doing stuff at the Rocket on Holloway Road. I remember seeing Underworld there and people like that. And then they ended up in the Brixton Academy in Mega Dogs.
Well, no, it's amazing how they morphed from this tiny little...
Yeah, they took it and ran. And when were they getting Club of the Year? 94, I think, with the NME. I think they got Club of the Year 93, 94 for the NME, I think it was. Maybe 93.
Well, that makes sense for the NME.
Yeah. I mean, the NME were quite good. They had a dance section.
They did. They took a while to get into it. I was always
Was it Sherman doing that?
Yeah, I think Sherman did the... Push? Sherman obviously knew his stuff.
Yeah.
Sherman knew his stuff.
And Push did Melody Maker, maybe.
I'm not sure. But I mean, I guess I was more I probably wasn't buying the NME that much anymore then. And the NME and all that, all the papers took a while to get into the acidy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I guess... Again, it was that...
Enemy got on there quite early. They had Richard Norris doing stuff for them.
Yeah.
You know, in the late 80s.
They had their column. They had a column, I guess.
Yeah, it was a column.
It was a column.
I think by the mid-90s, dance occupied maybe 4 pages in the middle, didn't it? But
I guess what I said, they did have stuff, but again, it was for the niche audience.
It was token.
Yeah, it was token. Yeah, it was token. And that's so. Yeah, I'm not denigrating the people who wrote the sort of stuff who would have been on the scene. So they knew they had to have something.
Yeah.
But then I think once all the Happy Mondays, you know, thing really kicked off, all that sort of, they kind of realised.
Okay, you're talking more late 80s. I'm thinking more early to mid 90s here. Right. I remember there was a very good DJ, a very good journalist called Tony Marcus who was around. He came to a lot of our parties. He was very switched on. He would bend Morris's ear, and like Morris would bend anyone's ear really about this music. But you know, he was very receptive, and he wrote a lot of stuff around then, and he was always around. I'd see him at parties. Oh, how's it going, Tony? Sort of thing. And there were other things popping up, like Robin Scanner's Electronic Lounge at the ICA, which was a slightly more arty event. All sorts. I mean, Whirligig had been going years. That was on its own little trip, really, in the corner with the parachute dance, and again a little bit more worldy and a bit more hippie, maybe. I think we only went to Whirligig once or twice, but. We were at a load of the Mega Dogs and Club Dogs. That was really our kind of like early 90s sort of rave things. Went to a couple of proper raves, but it wasn't the late 80s style. It was much more like in a big sports centre. I mean, I remember seeing Charlie, the Prodigy, when Charlie was at number 1, and they did a big PA in the middle of a rave in North London in some sports centre. It was all it was good, but the rest of the night was a little bit soulless, I found. It wasn't really on the right drugs, or any drugs, actually, probably for that one. But
so the Telepathic Fish, I guess, yeah.
The Telepathic Fish was going. We were getting a bit of press. We did the Cool Tan. Quite a lot of people came to Cool Tan because I think there was a Mega Dog the night before in Brixton. This was still in Brixton. And I think they came to us after. And we were on all Sunday into the evening.
Oh, wow.
And another very influential and important meeting through the Telepathic Fish things was Matt Black from Coldcut, who Mixmaster Morris had put me on to because we needed some visuals. We realised after being in our house, we're suddenly in a huge, big, dark squat, and some UV banners are only going to go so far. So Mixmaster Morris said, with, you know, his usual bluster, sort of, get Matt Black in, he's a VJ. You know, and the word VJ was still a new thing.
Yeah.
We'd heard through the media, video jockey, if you will, or visual jockey. I think maybe was better.
That was a word of the early 90s.
It was. There was DJs and there were VJs, but you'd never really seen a VJ before.
No, exactly, yeah.
And the funny thing was, Matt came down and he VJ'd at our gig. And we didn't know him at all. He came.
Was this
down
in your house or?
No. This was in the squat gigs, not the house.
Oh, okay,
gig, not the house gig. Morris played in our house.
Oh, yeah, all right.
But Matt did the squat gigs in Brixton, and pretty much became part of the crew instantly, as Morris was. You know, he was like, they played at all of the Telepathic Fish parties, and Matt came down. He really liked what we were doing. Matt's very good at sort of tapping into an underground, and like feeding off that vibe and inputting his own thing. And he liked what we were doing. He heard what myself and Mario were playing, and he invited us onto Solid Steel, which was the Coldcut radio show on Kiss FM, which was now legal, not pirate anymore. And so we'd go on there, we'd do mixes and chill out, very much playing the stuff of the day. And I later found out that Matt hadn't actually VJ'd publicly before anywhere. He'd been talking about it in the press, but hadn't ever actually really done it. It was more of a concept. But,
well, there you go. You probably gave him a good chance to experiment with it and just go and do it, you know. And again, it's like
and you know, he just started Ninja Tune a few years ago with Jonathan Moore from Coldcut, and that was, you know, sort of finding its feet still. And
well, I love the early Coldcut stuff. I mean,
me too. You know, I was into Coldcut when they pretty much started in the 80s, and then when they started Ninja, they were by that time signed to Arista as Coldcut, so they couldn't record as Coldcut on Ninja Tune, so they started DJ Food. That was an early Coldcut project of Matt and John, and it was breaks and beats for DJs basically, and their whole thinking was like, we're going to make some proper break beats. Do you remember those Simon Wren? Was it Simon? Who was music ahead of her time? Not
Simon Harris.
Simon Harris, the breakbeat albums.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did a load of those, but they weren't that good.
No.
They were all drum machines and stuff until about the third or fourth volume when he suddenly started sampling breaks.
Although he did do a few cool releases on that label.
Oh, he did loads of great
early hip hop stuff that had been sampled like a lot.
Yeah, totally. Well, Hijack were on it, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think they thought that's our only competition. There were a few others around, at the time that were bootleggy, and they'd been to the States, at the end of the 80s in Japan because of their success. They bought a shitload of really, really good funk and jazz and all this sort of stuff. So they just piled that all onto the DJ Food records. And there was, I think by the time I met Matt, there was at least 4 volumes out there.
Yeah, I remember them coming out.
Yeah, there was pretty much one a year from the early 90s. And then I'd even bought them, actually. And then at Telepathic Fish 4 at the Cool Town, Matt brought along this guy, PC, Patrick Carpenter, to DJ, because Matt was going to DJ, but he concentrated on the visuals. He said, look, I brought my mate Patrick. He's our engineer, and he works on the show. And he came along and he played. And we ended up teaming up and being DJ Food.
Okay.
Weirdly, like we were all working under this sort of like Coldcut umbrella after a while, because things with the Telepathic Fish sort of petered out around sort of 95, because we all moved out of the house and went our separate ways. Chantel went to Sheffield and worked for Warp. Mario was working for Hex with Matt Black doing computer games, and David was working in Ambient Soho and doing other things. And I was working for Ninja Tune. I started designing for Ninja Tune. I started working with Coldcut, doing the radio show, making music in the studio. We did the Journeys by DJ mix, just mucking in and helping because Matt liked what I was doing, and then paired me up with Patrick, and we sort of became DJ Food. And him and Jonathan had got their name back from Arista, and they could.
So the Journeys by DJ mix, was that like edits, or was that like?
It was recorded live.
Yeah.
But then we'd use an ADAT.
Okay.
Which is like a sort of weird multi-track thing, and you would be able to record, and then you could like punch into the record. You could kind of play it and punch in recording. So we'd play a bit. We'd mix a load, and if we made a mistake, we'd stop, and then we'd sort of wind it back a little bit like a pause button tape, and then we'd play it in, and we'd line all the tracks up.
No, that makes more sense, because obviously, unless you literally are the.
No, it's not one take.
It's like
there's a lot of live stuff on there.
I'm sure there is, but that kind of makes sense what you're saying. That's what I would have thought. Yeah. I think I've got that CD downstairs somewhere. It's the one with the weird cover. Is it this one? I've got one. I'm sure it's a Coldcut Journey.
Yeah.
And it's got a really weird sort of cover that's you can never put it in the CDs properly because
really? Okay.
It's got like I don't know. It's got a weird sort of thing wrapped around it.
Oh, like a sort of OB slip.
It's not even an OB slip. It's more than that.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to dig it out.
Case, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway,
there's a couple of versions of that, but yeah, we did a lot of that. I think there was a bit of early hard disk editing right at the end because we flew over a load of the spoken word bits after.
Okay.
The main mix was recorded in the studio.
So the Solid Steel mix, was that every week, or was that?
Solid Steel was 2 hours every Saturday night, 1 till 3.
Okay.
The broadest beats in London on Kiss FM. So it was like Sunday morning, really. So a lot of people would hear it in their cars coming back from clubs.
So was that a pre-recorder that was live, was it?
We mostly did it pre-record on a Friday night, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of work to do 2 hours every week.
Yeah, but there was 4 of us. There was John, Matt, myself, Patrick, in different combinations.
Yeah, okay.
There would always be at least 2 of us.
Yeah, all right.
So we'd have an hour or half an hour each.
Okay.
And that was good fun because we'd just get up there and bring what we'd bought that week or been sent.
So where are you doing that? Is that up in London Bridge?
Holloway Road.
Oh, Holloway Road.
That's where Kiss was then.
Oh,
Holloway
okay.
Road.
Oh,
I think it still is there actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, you were doing it actually at Kiss.
Oh, yeah. We pre-record at Kiss. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. All right.
And then occasionally we do it live, but that would be because we'd be DJing somewhere on the Friday night or something like that. No, very rarely.
No, fair enough. I mean, obviously, Latin Rascals and all that sort of stuff. I mean, obviously, they used to do their mad mixes where they take like a couple of weeks to do like an hour mix because they were cutting up so many edits using this. For those who don't know, that's like early 80s, 82, 83, 84.
Tape edits, yeah.
But they were doing tape edits with, and when I say tape edits, they're like reel-to-reel tapes, not cassette tapes,
Yeah.
and they were doing what they called razor edits and slicing them,
Yeah.
and they'd copy bits, and
Yeah,
some of them are
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Yeah.
So was that an inspiration for the Solid Steel? Or
I think Solid Steel was a mixture of different things, like definitely Latin Rascals to a fault, but I always found them, they were best when they were doing the staccato beat things.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
they chop up the beats and stuff.
Machine gun edits.
Yeah. I mean, it was Double D and Steinsky with the lessons. They're like the ground, and Grandmaster Flash, Wheels of Steel. But really, it was also things like Negative Land and the Tape Beatles and that sort of sonic spoken word thing mulched in as well, and dub as well. Obviously, Tackhead.
Yeah.
Agent Sherwood, and
Well, I'm a big fan of the early Mark Stewart, the first Tackhead album before they went shit.
Yes. All the black and white covers.
Yeah,
as soon as it goes into
there
colour.
we go. That's a good way. That's a good way to put it, actually. Black and white covers. There you go. Yeah. I mean, funny enough, I did a radio show last week, and I played a couple of Fats Comet at the start.
Keith LeBlanc. Yeah.
Which still sounded fat as fuck.
Amazing records. Yeah. Art of Noise again.
Yeah.
That Trevor Horn thing, the Slave to the Rhythm album with all the little spoken word bits. It was a very much a sort of all hands on deck thing where one of us would be playing off of two turntables and another one would be flying stuff in from a CD, or even like punching in spoken word jingles. They used to have these jingles on CD called Word Treasure, and it would be 90, because you only have 99 tracks on a CDR, 99 tracks of spoken word with a little signifier. So if you listen back to a lot of the old Solid Steel shows, you'll hear the same bit of spoken word repeated, but in a different context from show to show.
Okay.
So it was very, very ad hoc and random, and it was like, well, what have you got? I've got a chilled set this week, so you go at the end.
Right.
And they'd have ad breaks, and that would break us all up and things like that. So we just freestyle it each week. I don't think we ever, made a mistake and stopped the tape. It was very much one take.
Yeah.
Back in that place until we got to the end of the 90s, where hard disk editing came in, and we could do that.
Yeah.
Maybe have a bit more control at home. Then by that point I'm fully ensconced in Ninja Tune, and I'm designing for them. I've redesigned their label, the logo, the look, the merchandise, the flyers. We're doing Stealth at the Blue Note once a month from the end of 95. Gets Club of the Year at the end of 96.
Oh, amazing, yeah.
And, that whole Blue Note scene, which is another scene that hasn't really fully been celebrated yet, really. But I hear that, again, there's another book coming out about that. And the whole Hoxton scene coming up from that, the Shoreditch.
Well, again, I told the story before. Again, I remember, like, when I was in the band called Rough and Ready, we going up to the Blue Note in the end of the 80s, maybe 1990, when it was a community music space.
Was it called the Bass Clef then?
No, Bass Clef was round the corner. No, I actually went there, that used to be on a Wednesday or Thursday, and I remember going to Bass Clef in the 80s, and that was one of them where you'd be like, sure, it should be, fairly quiet, deserted.
Yeah.
Well, I always get a bit funny when I say deserted, because basically there's loads of people live around the back of all the housing estates.
Yes.
They never get talked about like they exist.
Yes.
So there are people who live there.
But it was more of a residential area.
But it was more residential area. But the bit by there, and I remember going in like Bricklayers Arms. My mate, his girlfriend worked in the Bricklayers Arms, and I remember going in there 89. Just hanging out there, and that was one about maybe 5 years later was the real hipster hangout, you know, almost where Nathan Barley started. Yeah.
Yes.
Before it went all Nathan Barley.
Before that, yes. Yeah.
But that Blue Note, there was a bass clef around the corner, but the Blue Note, I went in that building when it was community music, and it was just like, but
that was a golden era for me, because that was the first time we had a monthly club, we had a residency, and it kind of blew up for the label from that point, because they put out their first compilation after 5 years, Ninja Cuts. Suddenly it made sense. Mowax had blown up the year before, so people were on that kind of tip, and it was I remember going to the early days of the Blue Note, and there would be a taxi rank. there would be maybe a corner shop, or you'd have to go down to the filling station at Old Street to get any money out of any cash point or get a drink or something.
Well, again, there was loads of parties there in the 80s when the warehouse parties were around there. Again,
weren't Mutoid Waste up there at one point?
They were, I think,
Curtin Road, maybe.
Yeah, near Curtin Road.
And all the YBAs were around there, weren't they, in the early 90s? They lived around that era, that area.
Yeah, exactly.
And, but yeah, it was definitely a lot of old factories, wasn't it?
It was a different era. I had a job in the mid 80s. Well, no, it's the end of the 80s. Sorry, but I was delivering sandwiches around Whitechapel, and we'd have to walk around all the back streets of Whitechapel, from Aldgate and all around there, and it was so different. It was just totally like loads of abandoned buildings that you could climb into.
Yeah.
You know, a friend of mine, she lived for about 6 months. I think it was in Brick Lane, in some building that was falling to bits, but she just moved in there, and I think the door was almost open, but she had a mattress there. She could sleep on the second floor, and saving her money.
Yeah, totally.
You know, dodgy as fuck, but like.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I really felt sorry for the residents of Hoxton Square, because they were getting this nightly club thing happening. You know, you obviously had Metalheads on a Sunday, but then I think we were the second major label to move in there with Stealth. Ninja Tune, but then you had Wall of Sound, you had Blood Sugar, which was Weatherall's thing, you had Athletico, you had Talvin's thing, what was that, Anoka, you know, stuff on Mowax had Dusted. There were so many nights there, every night of the week, Newphonic, all that early stuff.
Well, that whole area, then you had 333, and you had all them clubs, other clubs started then opening up.
Cargo later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there was so much there, yeah. Because the 333, we moved into that after about 18 months of the Blue Note, we decided to kind of knock it on the head, because the vibe was changing. It was getting a bit too successful. But we still needed a place that we wanted to go. And also, I think the Blue Note was having all sorts of problems at that point with residents complaining. The 333 was literally on the corner. It was Old Gay Club, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was crazy, because it had 3 floors and it was a real weird shape. We did quite a few there, at least sort of 6 or 7 parties there. And then that was like 98, 97, 98 maybe.
Yeah.
And then when did Cargo open? About 2000 maybe.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Cargo was a bit later, and we had a thing there going into the new millennium.
Yeah.
Which was really good, that we did for a good 18 months.
So Ninja Tune, were they based down in London Bridge?
They were, yes. Early on they were. I think originally they were in Dollis Hill sort of area around North London for the first couple of years. Then they moved in. I actually remember helping them move in. So it must have been about 93, 94 at Clink Street, which is Winchester Wharf, in near London Bridge, which was over the road from the Clink Museum, which obviously hosted the raves in the late 80s.
Exactly, because I remember when Ninja Tune were there, because I remember there was a place called Backspace.
That's it, yeah.
Which was it under Ninja Tune?
I think it was on the first floor maybe, and we were on the second.
Right, yeah.
Or maybe it was on the third, I don't really remember.
I don't know, I think it was on the main floor, but I remember you could go in. I remember it was a guy called James.
Yeah, I can't remember his second name, but yeah, that was an early internet space, wasn't it?
I remember going in there, and this is, again, 92, 93 maybe. It was an internet space. Again, this is why when you were saying before about the early computer graphics and all that, this around this sort of time when it was like you'd have what they call, it sounds so quaint now, cyber cafe.
Yes.
You know, you don't really get many people.
I haven't heard about
exactly.
that.
Imagine
that word for
it. What are you doing today? What are you doing today, Kev? I'm just popping down to cyber cafe to check my emails and go on to the World Wide Web
and to consume a smart drink.
Exactly. Yeah. And like James ran it, it was very on. It had internet access, but it was also like very sort of. He was linked to loads of the arty sort of stuff. Yeah. And yeah, it just felt like, again, there was a certain.
I never really knew what they did in there. It was computing and the internet.
But that's why I was trying hard to explain it, because I still don't know what they fucking did.
But were they an early sort of internet provider almost, in that you'd sign up with them and they would build you a website?
Well, again, it was that thing of I don't really know how he made any money, James, did it? I can't even remember if they sold any drinks or anything. Like you said, maybe they sold a bloody smart drink or something.
I don't know. Was it a cafe? I don't know.
think it was. I mean. Again, I did a few radio shows down there with mates of mine, and it was the mid 94, 95, something like that. And I remember this was literally in the last 5-10 years. They were still online, but they were on this real player files that were like that was so shit because they were like
56K or something.
Well, I think 56. I think that was
high fidelity.
I think that was living the dream, mate. I think this was more like 14 or whatever it was.
Okay.
And they were literally, and they were still, they'd survived. They're gone now. Right. I think there's still some sort of page there, but yeah, it was that era when. Yeah, it almost, again, like I said, it's the early 90s, it was looking towards the future, and it felt like you were connecting to this.
Yeah.
Because obviously there was all the early internet stuff where you had the chat, the, what are they called, where you could, the message board sort of style.
Bulletin boards.
Bulletin boards. Is
forums.
Yeah, bulletin boards is probably the correct term, when you could go on and check some, if you wanted to check loads of weird early 70s ambient records, that stuff was hard to find out, so you could go on some nerdy.
You could find the information about it. You couldn't stream it or download it, but for another 10 years at least.
No.
Yeah, but I remember Matt Black again being very forward-thinking, and one day announcing we're going to all communicate by email.
Yeah.
I've set up the Ninja Tune email, and these are your emails. Right. And I still use mine to this day.
Okay.
And he was right. And Matt's been always ahead of the curve technologically.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say we kind of skipped over Megatripolis, which was quite a big.
Yeah, let's not skip over that. Well, this will probably go around because that ties in, like I said, with this weird sort of
94, 93.
Well, yeah, but this. I mean, I think Megatripolis was even a bit earlier than that, was it? Or do you know what year it opened?
I think Megatripolis started in 93.
Okay.
I think because we were doing Telepathic Fish parties then, and we played at the opening night. When I say we, I think it was me and Chantel. She had the connection to the people at Megatripolis, got us in on the guest list. We played. It was the crazy one where, I mean, depending on who you believe, 1,000 or 2,000 people turned up and couldn't get in outside.
But I'm pretty sure I went to the opening night. I have no memory of it being like that.
I've got
I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it wasn't busy, but I don't remember it being like some.
I've read this elsewhere. I think it was a Sunday night. And I've got a diary that I kept from back in that time, and I got it all out to basically sort of remind myself for this Telepathic Fish compilation that I've just done. And I've got something to the effect of club history was made or something because thousands of people couldn't get in.
Right.
Whether I was hearing that second or third hand, I don't know, but I've since read things that corroborate that. But again, I can't.
Was it a Sunday night? I thought Megatripolis was on a Thursday.
No, it was on a Thursday, but I think the opening night was on a Sunday.
Oh.
From my diary. I mean, I could be wrong.
Well, maybe I didn't go then. I don't know if I went on a Sunday, but
I've got some scans of this. I can maybe send them along for the thing. Some of them don't make any sense though, because they were written, in a haze.
Well,
but yeah, Megatripolis was on.
You meant to be recording history,
I know,
Kevin.
I know. It's all vague history.
Exactly, mate. Well,
But yeah, Megatripolis was on Thursday, and they had that weird thing, didn't they? It was very hippie, cyber hippie, if you want. And we would play in the ambient room upstairs. The Cauldron, was it?
I don't know. I mean, well, obviously, because I had Ian St. Paul on, who did Spectrum, and he also did Land of Oz.
Yes.
And obviously, they had the the orb, and
Jimmy
Corty doing the chill out room, or the white room, as they called it.
Yep.
Was that a link, or that was just a case of that they did it?
They were early on.
First,
we didn't really have a link to the KLF, although I did go to one of Jimmy Corty's squat parties in Stockwell one time with Mixmaster Morris, because he knew Jimmy, and he had an amazing garden party one summer, and we went along, and he had a sound system in the back garden with Alex from the Orb playing, and a pond, and then there was this amazing array of like tea and cakes on a table out in the garden, and we were just like, starving students.
Yeah, almost. I was going to say, yeah.
We didn't really.
That wasn't during the ecstasy years. Yeah.
No, it was a bit later, about 92.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was post KLF basically.
Okay.
They were pre-burning £1 million. We played in Megatripolis a lot. We did some Telepathic Fishes there. We did a lot of guest spots, but the music was changing. 94, 95, trip hop was coming in. I was getting involved with Ninja, and I always remember it as being good, but it wasn't really my vibe. And I think we talked about this earlier. It was that that tie-dye fractal thing wasn't really my thing, but it was a cool space and a cool...
Yeah,
there wasn't really anywhere else like that on a Thursday.
No, I mean, I went down there loads of weeks, and it was more or less because I knew it was a meeting spot.
Yeah, social place. Yeah.
I mean, again, it was like heaven. It's like such a massive club. I can fit a few thousand people in, can't it?
Yeah.
So I can't remember, and I think we always used to have either freebies or it was cheap to go down there. Can't remember exactly, but probably didn't pay to get in. So like, it was literally just go down there, hang out, meet people.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I do remember loads of us be like, oh, not slagging it off. Well, slagging it maybe worth slagging it off. Just loads of hippies.
Yeah.
I think I said to you before, I'd always had that. I always felt more affiliated with the punky sort of attitude, and it felt like it was Revenge of the Hippies, you know.
Bit, yeah.
You know, and it was like, what? But when I spoke to Aaron in the last podcast, you know, and it was Fraser Clark who did it. It was an interesting character. And,
Oh, very much so, yeah.
You know, and there was respect to Fraser Clark. I'm not knocking Fraser Clark.
No.
And
he's one of the original heads from the 60s.
Yeah, and in one way, I think I've got a better understanding of a lot of that scene now.
Yes.
As in how radical some of them OG hippies were, not all the peace and love ones who lived in the home counties and, you know, were Lord so-and-so.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more radical stuff.
There was a lot of stuff going on which I'm gutted now that I missed.
Yeah.
They had talks weekly up in the sort of, I don't know what the chamber was called at the top.
Yeah.
And they had all sorts of people coming in or beaming in. They're like Leary beaming in on a feed or something.
Yeah, exactly,
you know, trying to do all that stuff. But I never really went in the main room that much. I was sort of in the chill-out-y area. Yeah. And I used to... That was the point where I was working at Books, etc. on Oxford Street during the day. And I would get on the bus in the morning sometimes on a Thursday with my record box, which was a huge metal record box, no wheels. And I would take it to work. I'd work all day. I was working in the packing part of the bookshop. And then I'd, you know, hoof it down Regent Street with this huge box to Charing Cross and play all night till 2 a.m. Yeah. You know, in the chill out spot and or whenever it was, and get the night bus home back to East Dulwich and then go to work the next day. Right. You know, and I'd probably again eat a slice of pizza in between. I don't really remember eating in the early 90s. No, well, to be honest, I didn't really eat a lot in the 90s just because of various reasons. Yeah, like, no appetite. Yeah, that's why it was definitely the rave diet was quite good for you if you want to lose weight. Yeah. Just get on the rave scene. Yeah, and I was definitely slimmer and we all were. We all were. More hair. Wow. Yeah, I did have more hair. I did have some hair then. Yeah. All right. So Megatripolis. So Megatripolis, it was just one of those sort of very pivotal. But it was again. It was. It never gets that many props, Megatripolis, but it was an interesting. Again, it was definitely interesting. Definitely, yeah. And I think that's where the hookup with the Rainbow Tribe came, because later it was like 2000. When was it? 94, 95, I think. New Year, we ended up doing a Telepathic Fish with the Rainbow Tribe in the Roundhouse in Kentish Town. Is it Kentish Town? Chalk Farm, isn't it? Well, Chalk Farm, Camden, whichever way you want to. Yeah. It's by Camden Market, the stables. Yeah. So I always call it Camden, but I guess it's probably more. It's by Chalk Farm Tube, isn't it? All right. Yeah. You know, but it, at that point was derelict and being squatted. Yeah. Or well, say squatted, but used for things illegally. We went in there on New Year's Eve to do a party. There were all sorts of power problems and generators wouldn't go on. Well, again, last podcast with Aaron, we were basically the famous Spiral Tribe party from Christmas Eve to New Year, 91 to 92. So it's and again years later, I think. So it's quite interesting. It's about 3-4 years later. And it's quite funny because there was loads of power problems then. So I don't know. It's probably the power in there. It's not brilliant, or they must have had generators. It must have had generators. There was no lighting in there. It was freezing cold. There was glass missing from the ceiling and stuff like that. And that place is huge. Someone lit a fire in the middle of the floor. Well, again, I think they did that on the Spiral Tribe one because it was literally it was in darkness. So I think the only way to get some light was to build a fucking bonfire. But again, going back to my diary entry from it, I remember just freezing our asses off all night, and then the power came on at 5, and I think maybe Mixmaster Morris played first thing, like as the sun came up, which was really nice, and then we ended up sort of going out into Camden for the day on New Year's Day, coming back, and more people were coming during the day because it was a thing. It was like this party's going on at Roundhouse, and we ended
Probably
up
better during the day as well because you could actually see because you get light coming in.
Exactly. The only thing what happened there was that obviously that bleached out any visuals, but there was this guy Nick Mindscape who'd put this huge banner up around, like, I'm not kidding you, half of the wall of the Roundhouse. It was absolutely enormous. I've got a photo part of it, and it's just it was crazy. And there was a little stage, and there was all this kit. And I don't know when I played. It was dark when I played, but it may have been New Year's Day evening. And then we were playing. I think Matt Black was doing visuals. Chantel played. I don't know who else played. They were all. It was really ad hoc. You know, there were all sorts of people around. It was very much like, it's your turn now, sort of thing.
You didn't have a structured set list.
No, no. It was very, very free form. And accounts vary as to what happened, but later on, when it got dark, and it had been ambient all day, and lots of drugs had been consumed by everybody, basically, all of a sudden there was a sort of switcheroo performed on the sound system, and all of these huge speakers came out of nowhere and basically swamped our sound system, whatever that was. I wasn't really in charge of that, with a huge, massive rave. Okay. And half the audience were like recoiling in terror, you know, probably on a really bad trip because of the thing. And then half the audience were like, at last, some dance music, you know, and it was very much us and them. And I think at that point we'd been going all day, and we kind of scurried away and packed all that stuff up, and the rave took over, really.
Well, you know, it's probably...
But that's how I remember it. I mean, you could ask anyone else there, and I'm sure they'd have a different...
Well, again, with all these histories that... This is, again, as part of the podcast, all these stories are from, you know, different angles. And what Aaron says about that Spiral Tri-Party, again, there was loads of dodgy things going on there. Even on the comments I've got on it, again, some people going, that's one of the best parties I've ever been to, and I was like, it's one of the worst parties, you know. It was so.
I'd love to hear more people's, you know, experiences of that if they were there, because I genuinely don't remember. I've got some photos, but I don't really know.
Well, again, partly what this is doing is like, for me as well, it's loads of memories of stuff, and again, it's like it's helping me remember, you know. Yeah. I don't even, you know, because there was even a bit of me. I was like, did I go that way? I don't know.
You've been to most things.
Yeah, I've been to most things. Yeah, it's a bit of most.
Or lived in most places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think, you know, after that, it was weird. I think that was the point that after that we did some more parties, and then we sort of splintered as a household. And Chantel went to Sheffield. I went off with Ninja. Mario did some stuff with them, and then he went off to a big computer gaming company. So the household split, really. The Telepathic Fish thing came to a natural end. David went off and did stuff, and he had a family as well. Started a family quite early, so he was kind of slightly out of the picture for a bit. And you know, and we all pursued our own things.
Did you have any link up with the place called Silverfish in Charing Cross Road?
I knew of it, but it wasn't really my thing.
No. All right. No.
It was more of a techno.
It was more techno-y, but I do remember it just at the time of Ambient Soho. There was like, they were doing stuff as well.
Definitely.
So
I think they started around the same time, maybe slightly later. But I remember the decor. They had that crazy staircase you went up, didn't they?
I mean, again, my memories are very vague of it. But you go up there,
top of Charing Cross Road.
Yeah, it's top of Charing Cross Road. It was in quite a weird space. Yeah. Again, I remember they had some odd sort of parties, and like I said, they're probably more techno-y than you
that's
were.
As I remember it. Yeah, I remember going in there once or twice.
All right, no, that's cool. That's maybe for someone else then, but
I remember there were parties down in Charing Cross Road in spaces above shops that I remember going to and seeing people like Square Pusher in '95 before we'd signed to Warp, and him doing little sets in, you know, like weird empty spaces.
Well, my mate who used to run the pirate radio station I was on in the mid-90s, he put out his first record.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just totally banging
acid.
Banging techno or something.
Yes,
like, it's not Square Pusher as he's known.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we were onto his stuff quite early because we got the early pre-warp stuff in from what Spy Mania was it? There was the label in Brighton that he put stuff on out after Your Mate.
Yeah.
He did a 12 or 2 with pre that. Then he had the Spy Mania stuff, and that's when we really got into it.
I think it was Rumble Tum Jum was my mate's label.
Right. Okay. I'm pretty sure I've got those somewhere. But that one side is about half an hour long, and it's really quiet by the end.
I don't know. I can't remember. Like it was probably mastered at JTS, who were always a bit sketchy.
Right. Okay.
You know.
Yeah. There's definitely too much music on one side of the 12.
Okay.
You know, but that's classic rookie era, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Somewhere it's like all these sort of records. Somewhere in the collection, I've got some white label with that on. I don't think it's worth any money. Yeah, but who knows?
Who knows? But we were trying to sign him. I think he did some stuff for the shop, Ambient Soho, on their Worm Interface label, and then Ninja were trying to sign him after I got him to remix a DJ Food track, Scratch Your Head, and then Warp got him basically, which was probably in hindsight the best thing, you know, but we did a few gigs together back in the day, and you know, he would jam over me cutting up breaks and stuff.
All right.
And we did that on Solid Steel. And,
you
know, really nice guy. Steve even stayed at his house one time.
Yeah.
Back when he lived in North London.
Yeah.
So after working at Ambient Soho for quite a while, maybe 2 years nearly, I was getting quite busy with the Ninja Tune stuff, sort of mid-90s, 95, 96, and Rocket, in his wisdom, said to me, I think Kevin needs to take a break here and go off and pursue his career. You know, like I was, you know, pretty much every week going, I can't make Friday, I'm in Birmingham, or, you know, I'm in Leeds or something like that. And he kind of saw the writing was on the wall and that thing, and sort of let me go, if you know what I mean. But it had to happen. And, you know, very perceptive man, Rocket. And I've got a lot to thank him for, definitely.
No, Rocket is an amazing character. I've got a lot of love for Rocket.
Yeah. Very good, very nice guy. So that was kind of the end of my involvement with Ambient Soho, and it was really where I jumped headlong into the Ninja Tune thing. And from 95, certainly 96 onwards, we were not only touring all over the UK, but then we were starting to go abroad. We were doing European tours, then we were doing Japan and America and all sorts of other places. And that is really another story for another day. Yeah. So, it's probably best to sort of wind that up there, really, as far as London's concerned. Yeah,
I think that's a story for another day, because there's loads of stuff we could go deep into that. But yeah, just to finish with, like, are there any projects you're doing at the moment that you just want to mention before we...
Well, the main thing really at the moment for me, which I had alluded to a couple of times in the interview, is this Telepathic Fish album, which I've done with David and Mario. Sadly, Chantel passed away a couple of years ago, but we were approached by Doug Shipton and Fundamental Frequencies, who used to be part of Finders Keepers, to do a compilation based around those early 90s parties of Telepathic Fish, complete with all the visuals and stuff, and we've just compiled that, which is coming out in September. So there's going to be some form of London party to go with that, and we've been trying to source a venue, and we found one in Brixton. I'm not going to give away where it is yet, but we found something in Brixton which has got the aesthetic of the old parties.
I was going to say, it's not an old tanning factory, is it?
It isn't, but it's not far off.
Okay.
But it's good. It's
right.
You know, and we're going to do something in September to launch that record, and I think maybe it will be a callback to the early 90s, but maybe with a bit of 30 years experience.
Oh, amazing. That sounds great. So when's the actual record going to be out?
The record's out 5th of September. I think we're going to do the party the week before. We're going to have Mixmaster Morris playing. Matt Black is going to do visuals, but 90s era visuals. So like, you know, that Silver Men and stuff.
I was going to say, right. Is it going to be fractals or like?
There probably will be fractals.
That's all right. I don't mind a bit of 90s fractals.
We'll try and create some sort of like time portal back to the early 90s squat scene.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one other quick thing to mention is that you did a book. Again, this is a whole other chat, but you did a book about light. What's the correct terminology?
I did a book called Wheels of Light a couple of years ago, which was about the designs for British light shows, basically. When I found a huge archive of artwork that was used in projection wheels for like psychedelic light shows in the 70s and 80s. And that is a whole other topic, which we could do in another podcast.
I'm not going to start talking about now, but I just know it's an amazing topic that if you're interested in some niche, like...
if you're interested in light shows,
I
mean, there is a wealth of history, and that is actually the topic of my next book. Actually, it's the history of UK light shows and psychedelic light shows in Britain from the 60s going through to 2000.
Okay, that could be your mastermind specialist subject.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave it there for today.
Okay.
We've gone in deep across all sorts
We
of...
did.
And as always, went off on a few tangents, which I'm prone to do. But yeah, thanks for coming down today, mate.
My pleasure, Neil.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
All right, cool. And I will see you at a boot fair very, very soon.
Maybe even tomorrow.
Maybe even tomorrow. I know there's one that we go to quite a lot tomorrow.
Yes.
All right, mate. Cheers.
Nice one.